The man standing on the back of the garbage truck had no idea that within the next few seconds, he would accidentally become the center of attention for one of the most successful women in the city. And he certainly had no idea that years later, hundreds of people would stand speechless inside a mansion because of him. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, have you ever judged someone by their job before getting to know them? Emma Carter had spent most of her life surrounded by successful people. At 32 years old, she was already one of the most respected corporate consultants in the region. Companies paid enormous fees for her advice. Business magazines featured her interviews. Her calendar was packed months in advance. Most people assumed she had the perfect life. The truth was more complicated. Emma's days began before sunrise and often ended long after dark. Her luxury apartment overlooked the city skyline, but she rarely had time to enjoy the view. Her expensive car spent more time parked in office garages than on the road. Success had brought financial security. It had not brought happiness. Over the years, Emma had dated investment bankers, attorneys, executives, and entrepreneurs. Every relationship followed the same pattern. The men were impressive on paper. But eventually she discovered that many of them cared more about appearances than people. Conversations became competitions. Kindness became weakness. Authenticity became rare. Emma was growing tired of it. On a rainy Tuesday morning, she left her apartment carrying a laptop bag, a cup of coffee, and a folder filled with documents she needed for an important meeting. The weather forecast had predicted light rain. Instead, a storm had rolled into the city. Wind whipped through the streets. Cars splashed water onto sidewalks. Umbrellas struggled against powerful gusts. Emma hurried toward her vehicle while trying to keep her documents dry. Then disaster struck. A sudden gust of wind ripped the folder from her hands. Papers exploded into the air. Dozens of pages scattered across the wet street. Emma froze. Oh no. Important contracts. Research notes. Client information. Everything was flying in every direction. Cars continued moving. Rain soaked the papers. Pedestrians rushed past without stopping. Emma dropped to her knees and began gathering what she could. But there were too many pages. The storm was winning. Then a voice spoke nearby. Don't worry. I've got the ones over there. Emma looked up. A tall man wearing a sanitation worker uniform was already sprinting across the street. He moved quickly, carefully, efficiently. While other people ignored the situation, he chased pages through puddles and traffic. Within moments, he had collected a large stack. A garbage truck sat parked nearby. His coworkers were helping too. Several minutes later, every document had been recovered. The man handed the stack back to Emma. Looks like we got them all. Emma exhaled with relief. Thank you. He smiled. No problem. She quickly checked the pages. Nothing appeared missing. That meeting she had spent weeks preparing for was still possible. Seriously, Emma said. You saved me. The man shrugged. It wasn't a big deal. It clearly had been a big deal. Most people would have walked away. He hadn't. For the first time, Emma really looked at him. His uniform was damp from the rain. His hands were dirty from work, yet his expression carried a calm confidence she rarely saw. No arrogance. No need for recognition. Just quiet kindness. I'm Emma. He extended his hand. No. They shook hands. Something about him felt different. Not exciting. Not flashy. Not impressive in the traditional sense. Just genuine. And after years of dealing with people who constantly advertised their achievements, genuine felt surprisingly refreshing. A loud horn sounded from the garbage truck. One of Noah's coworkers grinned. Come on, Romeo. We have work to do. Noah laughed. Guess that's my cue. Emma smiled despite herself. Thanks again. Good luck with your meeting. Then he climbed back onto the truck. A moment later, it disappeared around the corner. Emma stood alone holding her recovered documents. For reasons she couldn't explain, She continued watching long after the truck was gone. The meeting later that day went perfectly. The client signed a major contract. Her colleagues celebrated, her phone filled with congratulatory messages. But whenever she found herself with a free moment, her thoughts returned to the man in the rain. Not because he was handsome, though he certainly was. Not because he had rescued her documents, though she appreciated that. It was because he had helped without expecting anything in return. In Emma's world, that was becoming increasingly rare. The following morning, she left her apartment at the same time as usual. Part of her wondered whether she might see Noah again. She immediately felt ridiculous. The city contained millions of people. The odds were tiny. Still, she looked. Nothing. The next day was the same, and the day after that. A week passed. Then, too, life returned to normal, until one Saturday morning, Emma decided to visit a local farmer's market. She loved the atmosphere, fresh produce, local vendors, live music, families enjoying the weekend. It felt different from the corporate environments that dominated her weekdays. She wandered between booths while carrying a canvas shopping bag. Then she spotted a familiar face. Noah. He was standing beside an elderly woman, helping carry several heavy boxes. The woman appeared to be a vendor. Noah carefully unloaded supplies from a vehicle and arranged them at her stand. Once again, he was helping someone. Once again, nobody seemed to be paying him. Emma couldn't help smiling. She approached. No documents flying away today. Noah turned. Recognition immediately appeared on his face. Emma. For some reason, hearing him remember her name made her surprisingly happy. They talked for several minutes. The conversation flowed effortlessly. No awkwardness. No forced small talk. No attempts to impress each other. Emma learned that Noah had worked sanitation for nearly 10 years. He enjoyed the work. He liked being outdoors. He liked serving the community. Most importantly, he liked the people. That answer surprised her. Most professionals she knew constantly complained about their careers. Noah seemed genuinely content. Eventually, the elderly vendor interrupted. "Young man, thank you for helping me." Noah smiled. "Anytime, Mrs. Thompson." The woman turned toward Emma. "This one is special." Noah immediately looked embarrassed. Mrs. Thompson ignored him. "He helps everyone." Emma glanced toward Noah. "That sounds accurate." He laughed. "Please don't encourage her." Mrs. Thompson continued. "Every week he comes early and helps set up. Refuses payment. Says it's no trouble." Emma wasn't surprised. The behavior matched exactly what she had already seen. The three spent nearly half an hour talking. When Emma finally prepared to leave, she realized something unusual. She had completely forgotten about work. Her phone had remained in her purse. She hadn't checked emails. She hadn't thought about clients. She hadn't worried about deadlines. For the first time in months, she simply enjoyed a conversation. As she turned to go, Noah spoke. "Would you maybe want to grab coffee sometime?" The question sounded almost hesitant. Emma smiled. "I'd like that." His expression brightened immediately. They exchanged numbers. Simple. Natural. No games. No rehearsed lines. No attempts to appear more impressive than reality. Just two people agreeing to have coffee. As Emma walked away, she felt unexpectedly excited. Meanwhile, Noah watched her disappear into the crowd. Mrs. Thompson noticed immediately. "I like her." Noah laughed. "You've known her for 10 minutes. That's enough." He shook his head, but secretly he agreed. For the first time in years, meeting someone felt easy. Neither of them realized it yet. Neither of them could possibly imagine what was coming. The friendships, the challenges, the judgment, the ridicule, the wedding, the mansion. The moment an entire room would realize how wrong they had been. For now, however, none of that mattered. It was simply a rainy city, a successful woman, a hard-working man, and the beginning of a story that would change both of their lives forever. Emma arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early. She almost never arrived early for anything. Her schedule was normally so packed that she measured her day in 15-minute blocks. Meetings, calls, presentations, strategy sessions, business dinners. Time was always in short supply. Yet here she was, sitting by a window and checking the entrance every few seconds. She laughed at herself. This is ridiculous. The woman who negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts without breaking a sweat was suddenly nervous about coffee. Outside, people moved along the busy sidewalk. Cars rolled through the intersection. The city continued its endless rush. Then Noah appeared. He spotted her through the window and smiled. For some reason, Emma immediately relaxed. Noah entered the cafe carrying none of the polished confidence she was accustomed to seeing from successful businessmen. There was no expensive suit, no luxury watch, no rehearsed charm, just Noah, and somehow that felt refreshing. Sorry if I'm late. Emma checked her watch. You're actually early? Really? By 3 minutes. He laughed. That's a new personal record. They ordered coffee and found a quiet table near the back. The conversation started easily. Then somehow continued for nearly 3 hours. Emma couldn't remember the last time she had spoken with someone for that long without checking her phone. They talked about childhood memories, favorite books, travel dreams, embarrassing mistakes, family, traditions. Nothing particularly important, yet somehow everything felt important. Noah listened when she spoke. Actually listened. Not the way many people did while waiting for their turn to talk. He paid attention, asked questions, remembered details. Emma found herself sharing things she rarely discussed. The pressure of always being successful. The loneliness that sometimes accompanied achievement. The exhaustion of constantly meeting expectations. Noah didn't offer dramatic advice. He simply listened. And somehow that helped more. As they left the cafe, Noah pointed toward a small bookstore across the street. You like reading? I love reading. Me too. Emma raised an eyebrow. That's dangerous information. Why? Because now I want to see your recommendations. The smile that followed surprised both of them. What was supposed to be coffee turned into an afternoon. The afternoon turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a long walk through the city. By the time Emma arrived home that night, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. Excitement. Not because of business. Not because of success. Because of a person. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Noah spent more time together. A lot more. Sometimes they met for coffee. Sometimes dinner. Sometimes long walks through parks or along the waterfront. The more time Emma spent with Noah, the more curious she became, because nothing about him matched her expectations. Most people defined themselves through accomplishments. Noah didn't. Most people constantly talked about what they wanted. Noah talked about what he appreciated. Most people chased status. Noah seemed completely uninterested in it. One evening they sat beside the river watching the sunset. The water reflected orange and gold across the skyline. Emma glanced toward him. Can I ask you something? Sure. You seem unusually happy. Noah laughed. Unusually? You know what I mean. He considered the question, then shrugged. I have a roof over my head. Emma smiled. Okay, I have food. Fair. I have people I care about. Also fair. He looked at the sunset. I spent a lot of years not having those things. The statement caught her attention. There was history there. Pain. Experience. But Noah didn't elaborate. And Emma respected that. Some stories required trust before they could be told. Trust was still growing between them. The following weekend, Noah invited her to a neighborhood barbecue. It isn't fancy. Emma laughed. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She attended anyway. The gathering took place in a small community park. Families laughed together. Children played games. Neighbors shared food. Music drifted through the warm afternoon air. Emma immediately noticed something. Everyone knew Noah. Everyone. People greeted him constantly. They thanked him, asked about family members, introduced him to newcomers. The respect was obvious, not because of money, not because of power, because of character. One person approached after another. No helped me when my car broke down. He helped move furniture when my husband hurt his back. He checked on my mother during the storm. He organized the food drive last winter. Emma listened in amazement. When she finally managed to pull Noah aside, she asked the obvious question. How many people have you helped? Noah looked confused. I don't know. Half the city seems to know you. He laughed. I think you're exaggerating. She wasn't. Not much. Later that afternoon, Noah introduced her to Sophia, his younger sister. The resemblance was obvious. Same dark hair, same warm smile, same kind eyes. Sophia immediately hugged Emma, which surprised everyone, including Emma. Sorry, Sophia said. I'm just excited. About what? Noah finally dating someone. Noah groaned. Sophia. What? It's true. Emma laughed. Sophia sat beside her. You have no idea how long I've waited for this. Noah wasn't dating. Not seriously. Sophia shook her head. He was too busy taking care of everyone else. Emma glanced toward Noah. He was helping organize food trays. Of course he was. Sophia noticed. See? Emma smiled. Yeah. I've never seen him this happy. That statement lingered with Emma, because the truth was she hadn't been this happy either. Weeks became months. The relationship continued growing. Slowly. Naturally. Without drama. Without games. Without uncertainty. The foundation forming between them felt strong. Real. Then came Ethan Bennett. The first complication. Emma encountered Ethan at a corporate networking event. They had dated briefly several years earlier. The relationship hadn't lasted. Mostly because Ethan viewed every interaction as a competition. Every conversation eventually returned to money. Success. Status. Prestige. Everything Emma was increasingly trying to escape. Unfortunately, Ethan still hadn't changed. After exchanging polite greetings, he asked the inevitable question, seeing anyone? Emma smiled. Actually, yes. Really? His name is Noah. Ethan nodded. What does he do? Emma answered honestly. He's a sanitation worker. The reaction was immediate. A brief pause. A confused expression. Then disbelief. A sanitation worker. Yes. Ethan laughed. At first Emma assumed he was joking. Then she realized he wasn't. You can do better than that. The words instantly irritated her. Better. Better. Better mean? No. Explain it. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Emma, you're successful. And? You deserve someone on your level. There it was. The attitude she hated. The assumption that a person's value could be measured through job titles and income. Emma crossed her arms. You've never even met him. I don't need to. That answer told her everything. The conversation ended shortly afterward. But it left her thinking. Because Ethan wasn't unique. Many people thought exactly the same way. They simply hit it better. Emma knew what would happen eventually. Family. Friends. Coworkers. Eventually they would all learn about Noah. And some of them would react exactly like Ethan. The realization worried her. Not because she cared about their opinions. Because she cared about Noah. She knew how cruel people could be. One evening she finally brought up the subject. They were walking beside the waterfront after dinner. The city lights sparkled across the water. Emma took a deep breath. Can I ask you something? Always. Do people ever judge you because of your job? Noah smiled. The expression suggested he had heard the question many times. Sometimes. Does it bother you? He thought about it. Then shook his head. Not really. Why not? Because they're judging a title. Emma remained silent. Noah continued. They don't know me. The simplicity of the answer stunned her. Most people spent their lives trying to convince strangers of their worth. Noah didn't seem interested. What matters, he said quietly, is what the people who truly know you think. Emma looked at him. At that moment, she realized something important. She admired Noah, not just liked him, not just enjoyed spending time with him. She genuinely admired the way he viewed the world, the way he treated people, the way he carried himself. And that realization frightened her slightly, because admiration often became something deeper, something stronger, something harder to ignore. As they stood beside the water, neither spoke for several moments. The city lights reflected across the river. The evening air remained warm. Finally, Noah smiled. What? Emma hadn't realized she was staring. Nothing. That's definitely not nothing. She laughed. Maybe I'm just happy. Noah smiled. Good. Neither of them said the words yet. Neither of them needed to. Love wasn't arriving like a lightning strike. It was arriving quietly, built through conversations, shared values, mutual respect, small moments, and with every passing day, it was becoming impossible to stop. 3 months after their first coffee date, Emma Carter made a decision that filled her with both excitement and dread. It was time for Noah to meet her parents. Under normal circumstances, introducing a boyfriend to family should not have been a major event. Unfortunately, the Carter family was not normal. Victoria and Richard Carter had spent decades building one of the most respected names in the city. Their social circle included executives, investors, attorneys, politicians, and business owners. Appearances mattered. Reputation mattered. Status mattered. Perhaps too much. Emma knew exactly what would happen when they learned Noah worked as a sanitation worker. The only question was how bad the reaction would be. She sat across from Noah at dinner one evening and finally brought up the subject. My parents want to meet you. Noah smiled. That sounds serious. It is. Should I be worried? Emma hesitated. That hesitation answered the question. Noah chuckled softly. Okay. Now I'm definitely worried. I'm sorry. For what? My family. Noah leaned back in his chair. Emma. She looked up. You don't need to apologize for something that hasn't happened yet. That was one of Noah's gifts. He always seemed capable of reducing complicated problems into simple truths. Emma smiled. I still wanted to warn you. No matter what happens, we'll deal with it. The confidence in his voice helped. But only a little. Because she knew her parents. Very well. The following Saturday evening arrived sooner than she wanted. The Carter family estate sat on several acres of beautifully landscaped property overlooking part of the city. Massive stone gates protected the entrance. Luxury vehicles lined the driveway. Everything about the property projected wealth and success. Noah studied the house as they arrived. Your parents have a nice place. Emma laughed. That's one way to describe it. You seem nervous. I am. More nervous than when you negotiate contracts. Much more. Noah squeezed her hand. The simple gesture calmed her slightly. Together they walked toward the entrance. A housekeeper welcomed them inside. The interior looked exactly as Noah expected. Elegant, expensive, perfectly maintained. Art covered the walls. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the hallways. Every room seemed designed to impress visitors. Victoria Carter appeared first. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled. Her designer dress probably cost more than many people earned in a month. She approached with a warm smile directed entirely at Emma. Then her attention shifted toward Noah. The smile became more formal, less natural. Emma. Mom. They hugged. Victoria turned toward Noah. You must be Noah. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Carter. He extended his hand. Victoria shook it politely. Welcome. A moment later, Richard Carter entered the room. Tall, confident, commanding, the type of man who naturally dominated any space he entered. He shook Noah's hand firmly. Good to meet you. You too, sir. Emma immediately noticed something. Both parents were evaluating Noah, the way investors evaluate potential opportunities. Observing, analyzing, judging. The evening had barely begun. Dinner was served shortly afterward. The dining room felt enormous. A long polished table occupied the center. Floor to ceiling windows overlooked the estate grounds. Candles flickered softly. Everything appeared elegant. Unfortunately, elegance could not prevent tension. The first part of the meal proceeded surprisingly well. Conversation remained light. Travel, current events, books, local news. Emma actually began relaxing. Maybe she had worried for nothing. Then Richard asked the question. So Noah, what line of work are you in? There it was. The moment she had feared. Noah answered without hesitation. I work in sanitation services. Silence. Brief, but noticeable. Emma watched both parents carefully. Victoria blinked. Richard paused while setting down his wine glass. The atmosphere changed, not dramatically. Just enough. Sanitation services. Richard asked. Wes? Noah smiled. I work for the city. Victoria exchanged a glance with her husband. A tiny glance. Most people would have missed it. Emma didn't. She knew exactly what it meant. Questions. Concerns. Judgments. All arriving at once. Richard cleared his throat. Interesting. The word sounded forced. Painfully forced. Noah remained completely comfortable. Most people don't find garbage collection interesting. Richard laughed politely. Victoria smiled. But Emma could already see what was happening. Her parents had created an image of Noah before meeting him. An executive. An attorney. A consultant. Someone similar to the men Emma had dated previously. Reality did not match expectations. And they were struggling with it. The conversation continued. Yet subtle changes appeared. Questions became more focused. More investigative. How long had Noah worked there? Did he enjoy it? Did he have plans for something else? Every question carried an invisible implication. Surely this couldn't be the final destination. Surely he wanted something more. Noah answered calmly, honestly, without embarrassment, without defensiveness, without apology. I enjoy the work. That answer surprised both parents. You enjoy it? Victoria asked. Very much. Really? Noah nodded. I get to serve the community. Victoria looked genuinely confused. Emma almost laughed. Her mother rarely encountered people who defined success differently than she did. For Victoria, professional advancement represented the primary goal. Noah seemed motivated by entirely different values. The disconnect fascinated and frustrated her simultaneously. Dinner continued. Richard shifted toward financial topics. Investments. Business trends. Corporate growth. Subjects where he felt comfortable. To Emma's surprise, Noah participated easily. Very easily. He understood economic concepts, market conditions, business operations, far more than anyone expected. Several times Richard appeared surprised by Noah's responses. Eventually, even Victoria noticed. You seem very knowledgeable. Noah shrugged. I read a lot. What kinds of books? Business. History. Economics. Richard raised an eyebrow. That answer clearly didn't fit the assumptions he had already formed. Emma secretly enjoyed watching it happen. Yet she also knew her parents well enough to recognize the underlying problem. Knowledge alone wouldn't change their opinion. Not entirely. Because the issue wasn't intelligence. It was status. Status mattered deeply within their world. After dinner, everyone moved into a sitting room overlooking the gardens. Coffee was served. Conversation became more relaxed, at least on the surface. Then Victoria asked a question that made Emma cringe internally. So how did the two of you meet? Emma answered before Noah could. He helped me during a storm. Victoria smiled. How romantic. Then she added something seemingly harmless. I'm surprised your paths crossed. The statement hung in the air. Subtle, polite, yet loaded with meaning. Emma immediately understood. Different worlds, different social circles, different lifestyles. That's what her mother meant. Noah understood too. But instead of appearing offended, he smiled. Life can be unpredictable. Victoria laughed politely. That's certainly true. The conversation moved on. Yet the tension remained. Hours later, Emma and Noah finally left. The drive home remained quiet initially. Streetlights passed overhead. The city glowed around them. Emma stared through the windshield. "I'm sorry," Noah sighed dramatically. "There it is again." "What? You apologizing? They judged you." No." Emma looked at him. "They absolutely did. Maybe. Noah smiled. "Emma, your parents love you." She didn't respond. Because that part was true. They want what's best for you. That doesn't make it okay. No. He nodded. It doesn't. Emma gripped the steering wheel. The situation frustrated her. Not because Noah had handled it poorly. Because he had handled it perfectly. Far better than she would have. Eventually Noah spoke again. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. I actually like them." Emma nearly drove off the road. "What?" He laughed. "Your father is intelligent. He was interrogating you. A little. And my mother. Protective." Emma stared at him. "That's your interpretation." "It's accurate." She shook her head. Sometimes Noah's optimism seemed almost impossible. Yet she couldn't deny something important. He hadn't allowed their judgment to affect him. Not visibly. Not emotionally. Not at all. Meanwhile, inside the Carter estate, another conversation was taking place. Victoria and Richard sat alone in the living room, the evening's events fresh in their minds. Victoria broke the silence first. "He's very nice." Richard nodded. "Yes, that wasn't the issue." Both knew it. "He seems intelligent." "Very." Another pause followed. Then Victoria finally said what they were both thinking. "A sanitation worker." Richard leaned back in his chair. Neither parent sounded cruel, just confused, concerned, unable to understand. Emma had every opportunity in life. Every advantage. Every possibility. Yet she had chosen someone completely outside their expectations. Victoria stared toward the darkened window. "She's serious about him." Richard nodded slowly. "I know." And for the first time, both parents realized something unsettling. Noah Walker might not be temporary. He might become family. The possibility changed everything. Because while Emma's feelings were growing stronger every day, so were the doubts of the people around her. And unfortunately, this was only the beginning. The judgment would grow louder. The criticism would become sharper. The challenges ahead would become far more difficult. But neither Emma nor Noah knew that yet. For now, they only knew one thing. Despite the tension, despite the awkwardness, despite the disapproval, neither of them wanted to walk away. And that realization mattered more than anything else. 6 months after meeting Noah Walker, Emma Carter realized something that both thrilled and terrified her. She was completely in love, not the kind of love she had experienced in previous relationships. This felt different. Stronger, quieter, more real. With former boyfriends, there had always been conditions, expectations, negotiations, unspoken competitions. Someone was always trying to prove something. Someone was always trying to win. With Noah, none of that existed. He never tried to impress her, never tried to control her, never made her feel like she needed to become someone else. For the first time in her adult life, Emma felt accepted exactly as she was. That realization changed everything. One evening they sat together on a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city. The skyline sparkled beneath a clear night sky. Emma watched Noah laugh at something she had said, and suddenly she could see it. The future. Not a vague idea. An actual future. Holidays together. Family gatherings. Growing older side by side. Building a life. The image felt surprisingly natural, as though it belonged there. That thought should have frightened her. Instead it made her smile. "What?" Noah asked. She blinked. "What?" "You're staring again." Emma laughed. "I wasn't staring. You absolutely were." "No proof." Noah pointed. "My eyes are the proof." She rolled her eyes. But secretly she enjoyed moments like this. Simple moments. The kind that never appeared in romantic movies. The kind that actually mattered. Across the restaurant, a musician played soft piano music. The city lights stretched endlessly in the distance. Neither noticed the elderly couple sitting nearby. The older woman had been quietly watching them for several minutes. Eventually she smiled at Emma. "You two look happy." Emma smiled politely. "We are." The woman nodded knowingly. "Hold on to that." Her husband squeezed her hand. The gesture carried decades of history, decades of shared experiences. Emma found herself wondering whether she and Noah could someday look like that. The thought remained with her long after dinner ended. Over the next several weeks, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work remained demanding. Clients remained demanding. The world remained demanding. But Noah became her place of peace. Whenever stress became overwhelming, she found herself calling him. Whenever something good happened, he was the first person she wanted to tell. Whenever something bad happened, he was the first person she wanted to see. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Then came the phone call. The call that changed everything. It happened on a quiet Thursday evening. Emma had just finished a long meeting. She answered her phone while gathering paperwork. "Hello, Emma."
It was Sophia.
Noah's sister. Something about her voice sounded unusual. Excited, nervous, both. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Then why do you sound like that?" Sophia laughed. "Because Noah has been driving me crazy." Emma frowned. "What happened?" There was a pause. Then Sophia said something unexpected. "I think he's going to propose." Emma nearly dropped her phone. "What?" "I didn't tell you that." "Sophia." "I definitely didn't tell you that." Emma sat down. Her heart was suddenly racing. "You think he's proposing?" "I know my brother." "How?" "He keeps asking strange questions." "What kind of questions?" "Family questions." Emma listened carefully. Sophia continued. "He asked what Mom would have thought about you." Their mother had passed away years earlier. Noah rarely discussed it. He asked about wedding venues. Emma's heart skipped. He asked what kind of engagement rings women like. "Oh my God." Sophia laughed. "Exactly." After ending the call, Emma sat quietly in her office. The possibility suddenly felt real. Marriage. The word carried enormous weight. Excitement, responsibility, commitment, love. Every emotion arrived simultaneously. Could she see herself marrying Noah?
Yes.
Without hesitation. The answer came instantly. That certainty surprised her, because she had never been completely certain with anyone else. Not even close. The following weeks became increasingly difficult, mostly because Emma couldn't stop wondering. Every dinner felt suspicious. Every date felt suspicious. Every romantic moment felt suspicious. Was tonight the night? What about tomorrow? Maybe next weekend? The anticipation became almost unbearable. Noah appeared completely normal, at least on the surface. In reality, Noah was terrified, because Sophia had been correct. He was planning to propose. And despite facing countless challenges throughout his life, this might have been the most nervous he had ever felt. Not because he doubted Emma. Never that. Because he wanted everything to be perfect. One Saturday afternoon, he visited a jeweler. The store occupied a quiet corner of downtown. Elegant displays filled the showroom. Diamonds sparkled beneath carefully positioned lights. The sales consultant approached, looking for something special. Noah smiled nervously. Very special. Several hours later, he left carrying a small box. The ring wasn't the largest in the store. It wasn't the most expensive either. But the moment he saw it, he knew. It felt like Emma. Elegant. Timeless. Beautiful. Over the next few days, he finalized his plan. The location mattered. The timing mattered. Everything mattered. Then finally the evening arrived. Noah invited Emma to dinner at a waterfront restaurant overlooking the city. Nothing seemed unusual. At least initially. They ate, talked, laughed, enjoyed the evening. Emma eventually convinced herself that Sophia had been wrong. Maybe she had misunderstood. Maybe Noah wasn't proposing after all. Then Noah suggested a walk. The waterfront glowed beneath thousands of city lights. The evening air felt perfect. The river reflected the skyline like glass. Emma noticed Noah becoming quieter, more thoughtful, more nervous. Then she noticed something else. His hands. They were shaking slightly. Suddenly she knew. Before he said a word, before he stopped walking, before he reached into his pocket, she knew. Noah turned toward her. The city disappeared. The sounds disappeared. Everything disappeared except him. Emma. His voice was soft, steady, emotional. She felt tears immediately forming. You changed my life. The words hit harder than she expected, because he had changed hers too. You made it better. Emma couldn't speak. You showed me what love actually looks like. Tears filled her eyes. Noah smiled. Then he lowered himself onto one knee. People nearby immediately noticed. Several stopped walking. Others smiled knowingly. None of it mattered. The entire world narrowed to a single moment. A single question. A single person. Noah opened the ring box. The diamond caught the city lights, but Emma barely noticed. She was looking at him. Only him. I love you. Her heart nearly exploded. I want every future memory to include you. The tears finally escaped. I want every success to be shared with you. More tears followed. I want every challenge to be faced with you. People around them had stopped moving completely. Watching. Smiling. Waiting. Emma Carter. Noah took a breath. Will you marry me? For a moment, she couldn't answer. Not because she was uncertain, because she was overwhelmed. Every memory flooded back. The storm, the documents, the coffee, the walks, the conversations, the laughter, the kindness, the man who had slowly become the most important person in her life. Finally, she laughed through tears. Yes. The crowd erupted. Strangers cheered. Someone applauded. A nearby couple shouted congratulations. Emma threw her arms around Noah. Neither cared about the audience. Neither cared about anything except each other. Several minutes later, Emma finally looked at the ring. It was beautiful. But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the man who gave it to her. As they stood together overlooking the city, Emma felt happier than she ever had before. Unfortunately, news travels quickly, especially in wealthy social circles. By the following afternoon, friends and family members had already heard, and reactions began arriving immediately. Some were supportive. Many were surprised. A few were openly critical. The first call came from Victoria. Emma answered with a smile. Hi, Mom. Is it true? The smile faded slightly. Which part? You're engaged. Emma glanced at the ring. Yes. A pause followed. Not a happy pause. A worried one. Emma, she knew that tone. The conversation wasn't going where she wanted. Mom, are you sure? There it was. The question. The doubt. The concern. Emma closed her eyes. The battle she had feared was beginning. And unfortunately, it wouldn't end with her mother. More criticism was coming. More judgment. More disapproval. The engagement that brought Emma and Noah enormous happiness was about to become the center of a social storm. A storm that would test their relationship in ways neither of them expected. But for now, as Noah held her hand and admired the ring sparkling beneath the city lights, they allowed themselves one perfect evening. One perfect moment. Before the world started interfering, the engagement announcement spread through the city faster than either Emma or Noah expected. Within days, everyone seemed to know. Friends knew. Coworkers knew. Family members knew. Former classmates knew. Even people Emma hadn't spoken to in years somehow learned the news. And unfortunately, not everyone reacted with excitement. Emma quickly discovered something disappointing about human nature. Many people who claimed to support happiness actually supported status. As long as both existed together, they celebrated. When happiness appeared without status, they became uncomfortable. The first major confrontation happened at a family brunch hosted by Victoria. Emma knew it was coming. The invitation had arrived only 2 days after the engagement announcement. That alone was suspicious. Her mother never organized events that quickly. The moment Emma and Noah entered the dining room, she understood why. Nearly every important relative was present. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, people who normally appeared only during major holidays. This wasn't brunch. It was an investigation. Noah seemed to realize it too. Yet somehow he remained relaxed. Emma wished she possessed his ability to stay calm. Victoria greeted them warmly. Richard followed. The smiles were genuine. The concern behind them was genuine too. Everyone took their seats. The questioning began almost immediately. One aunt leaned forward. So, Noah, here we go. How long have you been working for the city? Almost 10 years. 10 years. Yes. The aunt blinked. Apparently that wasn't the answer she expected. A cousin jumped into the conversation. Do you plan to do something different eventually? Emma closed her eyes. No smiled politely. I'm happy where I am. Several relatives exchanged confused looks. Emma wanted to laugh. Or possibly both. Another family friend joined in. What attracted you to sanitation work? The way she asked made it sound like Noah had chosen an unusual hobby. Noah answered calmly. I like helping people. Simple. Honest, true. Yet somehow that answer confused them even more, because it didn't fit their worldview. The discussion continued. Question after question. Observation after observation. Most remained technically polite. None felt supportive. By the time brunch ended, Emma was exhausted. Not because Noah had performed poorly, because he had performed wonderfully. And it still wasn't enough. As they drove home, she gripped the steering wheel. I hate that. What? The way they talk to you. Noah looked out the window. They were curious. No. Emma shook her head. They were judging. Maybe a little. A little? He laughed. Emma stared at him. How are you not angry? Noah thought for a moment. Then shrugged. Being angry won't change anything. The answer frustrated her. Mostly because it was true. A week later, the criticism intensified. This time it came from her professional circle. Emma attended a corporate networking event at one of the city's most exclusive hotels. Normally Noah accompanied her. Tonight he was working late. Emma wished he had been there. At least then she wouldn't have faced the comments alone. The evening started normally. Business conversations, industry updates, networking. Then Ethan Bennett appeared. Perfectly tailored suit, perfectly styled hair, perfectly rehearsed confidence. Some things never changed. He approached carrying a drink. Emma. Ethan. I heard congratulations are in order. She already disliked his tone. Thank you. He glanced toward her engagement ring. Interesting choice. There it was. Not even pretending anymore. Emma folded her arms. What does that mean? Ethan smiled. I just expected something different. Such as? You know. No. Explain it. His smile weakened slightly. Emma enjoyed that. You could have married anyone. I know. Someone successful. The irritation returned immediately. Successful according to who? Ethan hesitated. Come on. Emma stepped closer. Let's hear it. Several nearby guests suddenly became very interested in their drinks. Nobody wanted to miss the conversation. Ethan sighed. You understand what I'm saying. I understand exactly what you're saying. Silence followed. Then Emma smiled, not a friendly smile. The dangerous kind. The funny thing is, Ethan, I've dated people exactly like you. His expression changed. And that's why I'm marrying Noah. Several people nearby suddenly looked impressed. Ethan certainly didn't. The conversation ended shortly afterward. But Emma left feeling angry. Not at Ethan. At the mindset. The assumption that income determined worth. The belief that job titles defined character. The arrogance behind it all. That evening, she shared the story with Noah. They sat together on their living room couch. He listened quietly. Then he surprised her. I feel bad for him. Emma blinked. For Ethan? Yeah. Why? Noah leaned back. Imagine needing a title to feel valuable. The statement lingered in the room, because Noah wasn't being sarcastic. He genuinely meant it. Emma stared at him. You know, that's either incredibly wise or incredibly annoying. Noah grinned. Maybe both. The weeks passed. Wedding planning began. And with wedding planning came even more opinions. Victoria wanted a luxury venue. A famous venue. A venue people would talk about. Richard wanted an impressive guest list. Important people. Influential people. People who mattered. Emma wanted something simpler. Noah wanted whatever made Emma happy. That difference created constant tension. One afternoon, Emma accompanied her mother to meet with a wedding planner. The planner showed photographs of extravagant ceremonies. Massive floral arrangements. Luxury decorations. Celebrity-level events. Victoria appeared delighted. Emma felt exhausted. Eventually, the planner asked a simple question. What does the groom do? The room fell silent. Emma noticed it immediately. Every time. The reaction always happened. The planner wasn't trying to be rude. She was simply curious. Emma answered, "He works for the city." The planner smiled politely. Yet Emma saw the brief flash of surprise. The same flash she'd seen dozens of times. And she was getting tired of it. Very tired. A few days later, Noah experienced something similar. He was helping prepare equipment at work when several coworkers approached him. One of them laughed. "So when are we meeting your rich fiancé?" Noah smiled. "Maybe at the wedding." The group cheered. Unlike Emma's social circle, Noah's coworkers were genuinely supportive. They didn't care about status. They cared about happiness. The difference was striking. One older coworker pulled Noah aside. "You seem happy." "I am." The man nodded. "Good." Then, he said something Noah never forgot. "The right person makes hard days easier." Noah smiled. That perfectly described Emma. As the wedding approached, invitations were mailed. Guests confirmed attendance. Plans became reality. The date grew closer, and so did the pressure. Every week brought new comments, new doubts, new concerns. Some people questioned the relationship directly. Others did it indirectly. Both hurt. One evening, Emma sat alone in her apartment reviewing wedding details. The guest list lay open before her. Names filled the pages. Friends, relatives, business associates, family acquaintances. As she read through the list, a troubling realization appeared. Many of these people weren't attending to celebrate. They were attending to observe, to judge, to gossip, to see whether the marriage would succeed. The thought saddened her. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Moments later, Noah entered carrying takeout containers. Her favorite food. He immediately noticed her expression. "Tough day." Emma nodded. Noah sat beside her. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Emma finally asked the question she had been carrying for weeks. "Do you ever regret this?" His answer arrived instantly. "No." She looked up. "No hesitation?" "None." "What if people never approve?" Noah smiled. "Emma, what?" "I wasn't planning to marry people." The comment made her laugh despite herself. Then tears appeared unexpectedly. Weeks of stress. Weeks of criticism. Weeks of pressure. Everything finally surfaced. Noah wrapped his arms around her. And for several minutes she simply cried. Not because she doubted him. Because she didn't. Not for a second. She doubted everyone else. Eventually the tears stopped. Noah handed her a tissue. "Feel better." "A little." "Good." He stood, then offered his hand. "What are we doing?" "Dinner." "We already have dinner." He smiled. "Then dessert." Emma laughed. "And after that, we keep planning our future." The simplicity of his answer warmed her heart, because despite everything happening around them, Noah remained focused on what actually mattered. Not the critics. Not the gossip. Not the judgment. Just them. A month later, the wedding day would finally arrive, and with it would come whispers, judgmental glances, questions, doubts. An entire room filled with people who believed Emma was making a mistake. What none of them realized was that they were about to witness something much stronger than status. Something much stronger than appearances. They were about to witness genuine love, And genuine love has a way of surviving things that status never can. The morning of the wedding arrived bright and clear. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the luxury hotel, where Emma and her bridal party were preparing for the ceremony. Most brides spent their wedding morning nervous. Emma spent hers annoyed, not because she was getting married. That part felt absolutely right. She couldn't wait to marry Noah. The problem was everything happening around the wedding. The whispers, the comments, the opinions, the endless stream of people who seemed convinced they knew what was best for her. A makeup artist adjusted her hair while several bridesmaids moved around the room. One bridesmaid glanced at Emma's engagement ring. "You seem surprisingly calm." Emma smiled. "I've never been more certain about anything." The woman nodded. That's rare. It was. Especially in Emma's world, many marriages within her social circle resembled business mergers more than relationships. People married for status, connections, influence, financial advantages. Love often appeared somewhere lower on the list. Emma had seen enough unhappy wealthy couples to last a lifetime. Meanwhile, across town, Noah was preparing with a small group of friends and coworkers. The atmosphere couldn't have been more different. No luxury suites. No elaborate preparations. No endless discussions about flower arrangements. Just a group of men joking around while helping Noah get ready. One coworker adjusted Noah's tie. "You nervous?" "A little." The room erupted with laughter. "A little." Another friend shook his head. "You're getting married in 2 hours." Noah smiled. "Okay, maybe more than a little." The older coworker who had offered relationship advice weeks earlier approached. "You still sure?" Noah looked surprised. "Absolutely." The man nodded. "Good." Then he smiled. "Because if you weren't, this would be a terrible time to mention it." The room laughed again. The jokes helped, but Noah's nerves remained. Not because he feared marriage, because he understood its importance. Marriage wasn't something he viewed casually. It represented commitment, responsibility, partnership, forever, and he intended to honor every part of it. As guests began arriving at the ceremony venue, another atmosphere developed. One far less positive. Clusters of people gathered throughout the property. Conversations flowed, observations circulated, opinions spread. Many focused on the same topic. Noah. Emma passed a partially open doorway while moving toward a preparation room. Inside, 2 distant relatives were talking. They hadn't noticed her. "I still don't understand it." Neither did Emma. Unfortunately, she knew exactly where the conversation was heading. "She's beautiful." The second woman nodded. "Successful too. She could have married anyone." There it was again. That phrase. Anyone. As though Noah somehow didn't qualify. Emma quietly continued walking before they saw her. She wasn't interested in another argument. Not today. Today belonged to her and Noah. Nothing else. The ceremony venue overlooked a beautiful waterfront park. Flowers lined the pathways. Elegant decorations filled the grounds. Guests occupied rows of seating beneath a clear blue sky. Everything looked perfect. Almost. As Emma waited backstage, Victoria entered the room. For a moment neither spoke. Mother and daughter simply looked at each other. Victoria smiled softly. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." Emotion filled Victoria's eyes. The past few months had been difficult. They disagreed frequently, argued occasionally, frustrated each other constantly. Yet beneath everything remained love. Victoria stepped closer. "Are you happy?" The question surprised Emma. Not because of the words. Because of the sincerity. "Very." Victoria nodded. A long silence followed. Then she said something unexpected. "I may not understand everything." Emma listened carefully. "But I want you to be happy." The statement wasn't full approval. Not yet. But it was progress. And today, progress felt enough. Emma hugged her mother. Victoria hugged her back. For the first time in months, neither mentioned Noah's career. Neither mentioned status. Neither mentioned expectations. Just love. Family love. Simple and honest. Minutes later, guests began taking their seats. The ceremony was about to begin. Outside, Noah stood waiting at the altar. The waterfront stretched behind him. Gentle waves moved across the river. Sunlight sparkled across the water. Everything looked beautiful. Yet Noah barely noticed. His attention remained fixed on the pathway where Emma would soon appear. People continued arriving. Conversations continued. Whispers continued. Noah ignored all of it. Then the music started. The crowd immediately became quiet. Everyone stood. Noah's heart accelerated. And then he saw her. Emma appeared at the end of the pathway. For a moment the world seemed to stop. Everything else disappeared. The guests, the decorations, the water, the city. None of it mattered. Only Emma. She looked breathtaking, not because of the dress, not because of the makeup, not because of the carefully planned details, because she was Emma. The woman he loved, the woman who had changed his life, the woman walking toward him. Noah felt emotion rising unexpectedly. He blinked several times, trying unsuccessfully to maintain composure. Emma noticed immediately. She smiled. A smile meant only for him. By the time she reached the altar, both were struggling to hide their emotions. The officiant began speaking. Words about love, commitment, partnership, family, promises. Emma heard most of them, but her attention remained focused on Noah. She watched his expression, his smile, his eyes. The sincerity there reminded her why she was standing beside him. Then came the vows. The moment everything became real. Noah spoke first. His voice remained steady. Yet emotion appeared beneath every word. He spoke about friendship, trust, respect, partnership, building a future together, facing challenges together, celebrating victories together, growing older together. The words weren't elaborate. They weren't rehearsed to perfection. They were simply honest. And somehow that made them more powerful. Emma wiped away tears before speaking her own vows. She talked about finding peace, finding authenticity, finding someone who made life better. Not through money, not through status, not through appearances, through kindness, through integrity, through love. Several guests became emotional. Even people who had doubted the relationship found themselves affected, because genuine emotion is difficult to ignore. Then came the rings, the promises, the final declaration. The officiant smiled. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Applause erupted immediately. Cheers followed. And for the first time that day, every criticism disappeared. Every judgment vanished. Every concern faded away. There was only joy. Noah kissed Emma. The crowd celebrated. For a brief moment, everything felt perfect. The reception began shortly afterward. Guests filled a large ballroom overlooking the waterfront. Music played. Food was served. Conversations flowed. The atmosphere remained festive, at least initially. Unfortunately, some people couldn't resist returning to old habits. Emma overheard snippets throughout the evening. Nothing direct, nothing dramatic, just enough. Small comments, quiet observations, whispers disguised as concern. The kind of behavior that often hurts more because it hides behind politeness. One businessman approached Richard during the reception. Emma happened to be nearby. So that's your new son-in-law. Richard nodded. The man smiled. He seems nice. The pause that followed said everything. Richard noticed it too. To his credit, he surprised Emma. He's a good man. The businessman appeared caught off guard. Emma felt a small surge of pride. Perhaps her father was changing. Slowly, but changing. Later that evening came the first dance. The ballroom lights dimmed. Music filled the room. Noah led Emma onto the dance floor. Everything else faded away. The guests disappeared. The noise disappeared. Only the music remained. And each other. Emma rested her head against Noah's shoulder. For several moments neither spoke. Then Noah smiled. We survived. She laughed softly. The day isn't over. Good point. They continued dancing. The simplicity of the moment felt perfect. No grand speeches. No dramatic declarations. Just two people happy to be together. Around the room, guests watched, some with admiration, some with skepticism, some with curiosity. Each person saw something different. But Emma knew the truth. They weren't witnessing a mistake. They weren't witnessing a mismatch. They were witnessing the strongest relationship she had ever experienced. Whether others understood it or not didn't really matter. The evening eventually came to an end. Guests departed. The ballroom emptied. The music stopped. The celebration concluded, and Emma Carter officially became Emma Walker. As she and Noah left the venue together, she felt optimistic. Excited. The difficult part was over. Or so she thought. In reality, married life would introduce entirely new challenges. The wedding was finished. The judgment was not. If anything, it was only beginning. Because now people weren't discussing an engagement. They were discussing a marriage. And many still believed it wouldn't last. What they didn't realize was that Emma and Noah were about to prove them wrong in ways nobody could imagine, including themselves. The first few months of marriage were surprisingly wonderful. Emma had expected challenges. Every married couple faced them, adjusting routines, sharing responsibilities, learning new habits, finding balance. Instead, life with Noah felt remarkably natural, not perfect. No relationship was, but easy in ways she had never experienced before. Each morning, Noah left for work before sunrise. Emma often woke just long enough to hear him quietly moving through the apartment. He never wanted to wake her, yet she usually woke anyway. Sometimes she would find a handwritten note beside the coffee machine. Have a great meeting today. Good luck with your presentation. Proud of you. Simple messages. Small gestures. They meant more than expensive gifts ever could. Meanwhile, Emma's career continued thriving. Clients increased. Projects expanded. Opportunities multiplied. On paper, everything looked perfect. Unfortunately, the outside world still refused to leave their marriage alone. 3 months after the wedding, Emma attended a corporate luncheon with several executives. The discussion initially focused on business. Then someone asked the familiar question, "How's married life?" Emma smiled. "Great." Several people nodded. Then another executive spoke. "Your husband still works for the city, right?" The smile faded slightly. "Yes." The woman tilted her head, almost curious, almost confused. "I always found that fascinating." Emma recognized the tone immediately. Fascinating. Interesting. Unexpected. Different. People used many words. They all meant the same thing. "Why him?" Emma answered politely. "I think he's pretty fascinating too." The conversation moved on, but the irritation remained. Later that evening, she returned home exhausted. Not from work. From people. Noah noticed immediately. Tough day. Emma dropped onto the couch. "I'm tired." "Work." "Human beings." Noah laughed. "That bad." She described the luncheon, the comments, the questions, the endless curiosity. When she finished, Noah sat beside her. Then he asked something unexpected. "Do you ever wish things were different?" And Emma looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Do you ever wish I had a different career?" The question stunned her. Because in all the months they had been together, Noah had never asked it, not once. Emma reached for his hand. "Never." His expression softened. "Good. Why would you ask that?" Noah shrugged. "Just curious." She studied him carefully. For the first time, she wondered how much criticism he experienced without telling her. How many comments? How many assumptions? How many judgments? Noah rarely complained. That didn't mean people treated him kindly. The realization bothered her a lot. The following weekend provided another reminder. The Carter family organized a large reunion. Nearly everyone attended. Extended relatives, family friends, business associates, dozens upon dozens of people. Emma wasn't excited about going. Neither was Noah. But family obligations remained family obligations. The event took place at a private country club on the edge of the city. Luxury cars filled the parking lot. Perfectly maintained gardens surrounded the property. Everything looked elegant and expensive. As soon as they arrived, Emma sensed trouble, not because anyone said anything, because everyone was watching, the same way people watch a movie after hearing controversial reviews, curious, judgmental, waiting. The first hour passed peacefully enough. Conversations remained polite. Food was excellent. The weather was beautiful. Then Ethan Bennett arrived. Emma immediately felt her mood worsen. Ethan seemed to possess a supernatural ability to appear whenever he wasn't wanted. He greeted people confidently, shook hands, shared stories, collected attention. Within minutes, he had become the center of several conversations. Eventually, he approached Emma and Noah. "Good to see you both." Emma forced a smile. "You too." That was a lie. Ethan looked toward Noah. "How's work?" Noah smiled. "Good. Bussy?" Usually. The conversation should have ended there. Unfortunately, Ethan continued. "I'm surprised." Noah raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Ethan gestured toward the country club. "This isn't exactly your typical environment." The comment landed like a stone. Several nearby relatives suddenly became very interested in their drinks. Emma stared at Ethan. She couldn't believe he had actually said it. Noah remained calm. "What makes you say that?" Ethan smiled. "As I said, it's just different." Coward. Emma hated when people hid insults behind vague language. "At least be honest." Noah simply nodded. "I suppose everyone has different experiences." The response contained no anger, no hostility, no embarrassment, just calm confidence. For some reason that irritated Ethan more. The conversation ended awkwardly. Emma waited until Ethan walked away. Then she turned toward Noah. "How do you do that?" "What?" "Stay calm." Noah laughed. "I've had practice." That answer wasn't funny. It was sad, because it meant experiences like this happened often. Far too often. As the afternoon continued, Emma noticed another pattern. People compared Noah constantly. Not directly, indirectly, subtly. But the comparisons existed. One cousin discussed her husband's law practice. Another talked about investment portfolios. Someone else mentioned a corporate promotion. Each conversation seemed carefully designed to highlight professional success, as though success only existed within certain industries, as though dignity belonged exclusively to white-collar careers. Emma grew increasingly frustrated. Then something happened that changed her perspective. A young boy wandered away from a family group, perhaps 6 years old, maybe 7. He looked lost, confused, scared. The adults nearby continued talking. Most hadn't noticed. Noah noticed immediately. Within seconds he walked over, knelt down, spoke gently, asked questions, comforted the child. A few minutes later he reunited the boy with his parents. The entire situation lasted less than 10 minutes. Yet Emma observed something important. Noah hadn't hesitated, hadn't looked around to see whether someone else would help, hadn't considered whether assisting benefited him. He simply acted, because helping people came naturally to him, the same way breathing came naturally. Sophia appeared beside Emma. She had been watching too. "He always does that." Emma smiled. "I know." "No." Sophia shook her head. "You know some of it." Emma turned toward her. Sophia watched Noah from across the lawn. Growing up, he took care of everyone. Something in her voice sounded emotional. When Mom got sick, he worked extra hours. Emma listened carefully. When bills needed paying, he found a way. Sophia smiled softly. When I needed school supplies, he somehow had money. The stories continued, one after another. Small sacrifices, quiet sacrifices. The kind nobody notices. The kind nobody celebrates. The kind that reveal character. Emma felt proud. Not because Noah possessed money. Not because of status. Because of who he was. Across the country club, Noah laughed with several elderly relatives, helping them carry chairs, fetching drinks, solving minor problems. Doing exactly what he always did, making life easier for people around him. Hours later, the reunion finally ended. Guests began leaving. Conversations concluded. Cars exited the parking lot. Emma and Noah walked together toward their vehicle. The evening sky glowed orange and gold. For a while, neither spoke. Then Emma finally said what she had been thinking all day. "I don't understand people." Noah smiled. "That's a very broad statement. I'm serious." "I know." Emma stopped walking. "Why do they care so much?" Noah considered the question, then shrugged. "Because appearances are easier than character." The answer surprised her. "Explain." "It's easy to see a title." He opened the car door for her. "It's harder to understand a person." And Emma thought about that during the drive home. The more she considered it, the more accurate it seemed. People liked shortcuts, assumptions, labels, categories. Those things required little effort. Understanding someone required time, patience, curiosity. Most people preferred the shortcut. Unfortunately, several days later, another family would provide even more evidence of that truth. The comparisons would continue. The criticism would continue. The judgment would continue. Yet something else was happening too. Something nobody noticed. While relatives focused on Noah's job title, they completely overlooked other parts of his life. Other parts he never discussed. Other parts he intentionally kept private. Secrets. Not dangerous secrets. Not dishonest secrets. Simply chapters of his life he never felt the need to advertise. Chapters that would eventually shock everyone, including Emma. But that revelation remained far away. For now, Noah Walker was simply a husband, a sanitation worker, a man many people underestimated. And the biggest mistake those people were making was assuming they already knew his story. If Emma had learned one thing during her first year of marriage, it was this: people rarely stopped judging once they started. Instead, they simply found new ways to do it. After the family reunion, Emma hoped things might improve. Perhaps relatives would finally see Noah for who he was. Perhaps they would appreciate his kindness, his intelligence, his character. Unfortunately, many people remained focused on the same thing they had focused on from the beginning: his job. And nowhere was that more obvious than at the Carter family's annual holiday gala. The event happened every year. It was one of the largest social gatherings in their circle. Business leaders attended, investors attended, attorneys attended, doctors attended, executives attended. The guest list practically read like a directory of successful professionals. Emma usually enjoyed the event. This year she dreaded it, because she already knew what was coming: comparisons. Endless comparisons. The gala took place inside one of the city's most prestigious hotels. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the ballroom. Live musicians performed near the stage. Elegant decorations covered every surface. Everything looked perfect, at least on the outside. Emma and Noah arrived together. As always, Noah looked comfortable. As always, Emma wondered how. "You realize you're the only calm person here?" Noah smiled. "That's probably not true." "It absolutely is." He laughed, then offered his arm. "Ready? New? Good." Emma looked at him. "Good. If you're ready for family events, something is wrong." Despite herself, she laughed. Together they entered the ballroom. The attention began almost immediately. Not hostile attention. Curious attention. Observing attention. The kind Emma had come to recognize. Guests greeted them warmly. Conversation started. Introductions happened. Everything seemed pleasant enough. Then the comparisons began. A distant relative approached with her husband. The husband was a successful attorney. Within minutes, the conversation somehow focused entirely on his career, his clients, his income, his recent promotion, his professional achievements. Emma noticed the pattern immediately. The conversation wasn't accidental. It never was. Eventually, the relative turned toward Noah. "And how's work going?" The contrast couldn't have been more obvious. 10 minutes discussing one person's accomplishments. 10 seconds discussing another person's existence. Noah answered politely. Everything's going well. The relative smiled, then immediately returned to discussing her husband's law practice. Emma almost rolled her eyes. Almost. The evening continued. Another couple arrived. This time the husband owned several businesses. Again, the conversation focused entirely on his success, expansion plans, revenue growth, future investments. Then came Noah. So you're still with the city. Emma silently counted to 3, then 5, then 10. She was trying very hard to remain polite. Across the ballroom, Ethan Bennett seemed to be everywhere at once. Talking. Networking, collecting attention. He moved through the crowd like someone campaigning for public office. Eventually, he joined a conversation involving Richard and several business associates. Emma happened to be nearby, which meant she heard everything. One executive asked Richard about his family. The discussion eventually reached Emma and Noah. Richard answered politely. Then Ethan jumped in. I still think it's fascinating. Emma closed her eyes. Not again. The executive looked curious. What? Ethan smiled. Emma could have married practically anyone. There it was. Again. Always the same argument. The executive glanced toward Noah, then back toward Ethan. To his credit, he looked uncomfortable. Even he realized Ethan had crossed a line. Richard's expression hardened slightly, something Emma noticed immediately. Interesting. Very interesting. The old Richard might have agreed. The current Richard seemed irritated. I think Emma married the person she wanted. The executive nodded. That seems like the important part. Ethan suddenly found himself without support. The conversation quickly moved elsewhere. Emma watched the exchange carefully. Perhaps her father was changing faster than she realized. That possibility made her surprisingly happy. Later that evening, Emma stepped outside for fresh air. The hotel's rooftop terrace overlooked the city. Thousands of lights stretched across the horizon. The view was beautiful. A few minutes later, Richard joined her. Neither spoke immediately. Father and daughter stood quietly beside the railing. Finally, Richard broke the silence. You seem happy. Emma smiled. I am. I can see that. The statement surprised her, because it sounded sincere, not reluctant, not forced, sincere. Richard looked out over the city. When you were younger, I always assumed your life would follow a certain path. Emma listened. The schools. He counted on his fingers. The career. Another finger. The marriage. A third finger. The future. He sighed. Apparently I was wrong. Emma laughed softly. About no. About a lot of things. That answer surprised her even more. For a moment neither spoke. Then Richard asked a question. Do you know why your mother and I worried so much? Emma thought she did. Status. Reputation. Appearances. But Richard shook his head before she answered. We worried because we wanted your life to be easy. Emma looked at him. Easy. Financial security. He nodded. Stability. Another nod. Opportunity. The explanation made sense. Even if she disagreed, Richard wasn't motivated by cruelty. He was motivated by fear. Fear disguised as concern. Fear disguised as expectations. Fear disguised as advice. The realization softened some of her resentment. Not all of it, but some. Meanwhile, inside the ballroom, Noah found himself talking with several elderly guests. Unlike many younger attendees, they seemed genuinely interested in people rather than arrêt sommets. One retired teacher asked about his work. Actually asked. Not judgmentally. Curiously. Noah described his job, the routines, the community, the people. The teacher smiled. Sounds meaningful. Noah nodded. It is. A retired firefighter joined the conversation. I understand. The man extended his hand. People look at jobs differently when they don't understand them. Noah shook his hand. The firefighter smiled. But communities fall apart without them. For the next hour, Noah enjoyed more meaningful conversations than he had all evening. Not because those guests possessed impressive careers. Because they possessed perspective. Something many successful people lacked. Eventually, Emma returned from the terrace. She found Noah laughing with the retired firefighter and teacher. The sight made her smile. No matter where he went, Noah always seemed to connect with people. Real people. Not titles. Not positions. People. The evening eventually moved toward dinner. Guests found their tables. Speeches began. Awards were presented. The usual gala traditions continued. Then came an unexpected moment. One of the event organizers invited several guests to share brief comments about community service and local involvement. Most speakers discussed charitable donations, fundraisers, corporate initiatives, important work, good work. Then someone unexpectedly called Noah's name. Emma looked surprised. Noah looked even more surprised. Apparently, the organizer had learned about several community projects Noah regularly supported. Food drives, neighborhood cleanups, volunteer programs. The audience applauded politely as Noah walked to the stage. Emma expected him to give a short speech. Instead, he gave a remarkable one. Not because it was dramatic, because it was simple. He spoke about helping people, being useful, taking pride in honest work, treating others with respect. The entire speech lasted less than 3 minutes. Yet when it ended, the applause felt noticeably stronger than before. Emma looked around. People were listening. Actually listening. Perhaps for the first time. Perhaps. As Noah returned to his seat, Ethan watched from across the room. His expression revealed something new. Frustration. Because despite every attempt to diminish Noah, people kept liking him, respecting him, admiring him, and Ethan couldn't understand why. The answer was simple. Character. The one thing that couldn't be purchased. The one thing that couldn't be inherited. The one thing that couldn't be displayed through a job title. By the end of the evening, Emma felt strangely optimistic, not because everyone had changed. Many hadn't, not yet. But cracks were appearing in old assumptions. Small cracks. Important cracks. The walls people had built around Noah were beginning to weaken. What none of them realized was that those walls were about to collapse completely. Because while relatives and acquaintances continued comparing Noah to attorneys, executives, and investors, they remained unaware of one important fact. Noah understood investing extremely well, better than most of them. And somewhere in the city, several pieces of real estate quietly carried his name. Properties nobody knew about. Properties he never mentioned. Properties that represented only a small part of a much larger story. A story that was getting closer to being revealed. Very close. The holiday gala ended with applause, laughter, and polite goodbyes. Most guests returned home thinking about the speeches, the networking, or the business opportunities they had discussed. Emma returned home thinking about Noah. Specifically, she thought about the look on people's faces during his speech. For the first time, many of them had stopped seeing a job title. For a few brief minutes, they had seen the man behind it. That mattered. Unfortunately, changing opinions takes time. And while some people were beginning to see Noah differently, many still weren't. A few weeks after the gala, Emma found herself buried beneath deadlines. Several major clients demanded her attention simultaneously. Her schedule became overwhelming. Meetings filled every hour. Emails arrived faster than she could answer them. By Friday evening, she felt exhausted. All she wanted was a quiet weekend. Instead, she received an unexpected phone call. The call came from Sophia. "Hey." "Hi," Emma replied. Sophia sounded unusually emotional. "Everything okay?" "Yeah." A pause followed. Then another. Emma immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" Sophia laughed softly. "Nothing bad." "Then tell me." There was another pause. Then Sophia said something surprising. Today would have been Mom's birthday. And Emma immediately understood. The Walker family's mother had passed away years earlier. The loss still affected both Noah and Sophia deeply. Especially Noah, even though he rarely talked about it. "I'm sorry." "Thanks." Sophia hesitated. You know, Noah never tells people what life was really like back then. Emma sat down. What do you mean? Sophia took a deep breath. Then she began sharing stories. Stories Emma had never heard before. Stories Noah had never told. And with each story, Emma felt her admiration growing. When Noah was 16 years old, his mother became seriously ill. Medical bills started piling up. Income disappeared. Fear moved into their home. Most teenagers worried about school dances, sports. Great. Friends? Noah worried about rent, food, electricity, medicine, Sophia's future. The responsibilities arrived suddenly, and they never left. He worked constantly. Sophia said, how much? Every chance he got. Emma listened quietly. He worked before school. Another pause. After school. Another. Weekends. Sophia laughed sadly. I don't think he slept. Typna pictured young Noah trying to hold everything together. The image broke her heart. He never complained. Sophia's voice softened. Not once. The stories continued. Noah skipped opportunities because the family needed money. Skipped vacations. Skipped experiences. Skipped parts of his own youth. Every sacrifice served the same purpose. Protecting the people he loved. Emma found herself staring out the window, trying to imagine carrying that burden at such a young age. She wasn't sure she could have done it. Sophia continued. When Mom got worse, things became harder. Emma listened carefully. Noah started working even more. How? I honestly don't know. Sophia laughed softly. He somehow found extra hours that didn't exist. The call lasted nearly an hour. By the time it ended, Emma felt emotional. Not because the stories were tragic. Because they revealed something extraordinary. Character. The kind built through hardship. The kind impossible to fake. That evening, Emma waited until Noah returned home. The moment he entered, she noticed the usual smile. The same calm presence. The same steady confidence. How many people understood where that came from? Probably very few. Noah placed groceries on the kitchen counter. Long day. Emma walked over and hugged him. Immediately, without warning, Noah laughed. Well, hello to you too. She held on for several moments. What was that for? Emma pulled back. I love you. His smile widened. I love you too. Then he looked suspicious. What did Sophia tell you? Emma laughed through tears. Everything. Oh no. Apparently you were a superhero. Noah groaned. Sophia exaggerates. She really doesn't. He shook his head, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. That reaction didn't surprise Emma. Noah never liked discussing himself, especially his sacrifices, especially his struggles. Yet Emma couldn't stop thinking about them. Over the following weeks, she started noticing small things. Details she had previously overlooked. Photographs, documents, old letters, evidence of a life spent helping others. One rainy Saturday afternoon, she found an old photo album while organizing a closet. The album belonged to Noah. Inside were pictures spanning decades, family gatherings, school events, birthdays, holidays, ordinary moments. Then Emma noticed something interesting. No matter the photograph, Noah always seemed to be taking care of someone, helping someone, supporting someone, standing slightly behind the spotlight, never seeking attention, always contributing. She turned another page, then another. The pattern continued. Eventually Noah entered the room. What are you doing? Emma held up the album. Research. His expression immediately became concerned. That's dangerous. Emma laughed. I've discovered evidence. Oh no. You're secretly a good person. Noah sighed dramatically. My reputation. She smiled. What reputation? The afternoon passed comfortably. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Music played in the background. The atmosphere felt peaceful. Then Emma noticed something else. A small box tucked near the back of the closet. What about this? Noah glanced over. His expression changed slightly. Not alarm. Not fear. Something else. Recognition. Oh! Emma opened the box. Inside sat several folders. Documents, receipts, paperwork. At first she assumed they were ordinary financial records. Then she looked closer. Property documents, real estate paperwork, purchase agreements. Emma frowned. What are these? Noah walked over. Old investments. The answer sounded casual, almost too casual. Emma examined one document, then another, then another. Several properties appeared listed. Different addresses, different years, different neighborhoods. Nothing extravagant, mostly small residential properties. Still, the discovery surprised her. You own these? Some of them. Emma looked up. Some. Noah smiled. A few. The answer raised more questions than it answered. But before she could ask them, Noah gently took the documents. Very boring stuff. The subject clearly made him uncomfortable. Interesting. Emma decided not to push. Not yet. Everyone deserved privacy. Still, curiosity remained. Over the next month, small clues continued appearing. Phone calls, meetings, occasional paperwork. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious. Just enough to suggest there was more to Noah's financial life than she realized. Meanwhile, Noah continued behaving exactly as always. Working, helping people, living normally. If he possessed secrets, they certainly weren't affecting his personality. That alone impressed Emma. Many people became arrogant after achieving even minor success. Noah remained unchanged. One evening, Emma joined him for dinner after work, a small neighborhood restaurant. Nothing fancy. Exactly the kind of place Noah loved. Halfway through the meal, the owner approached their table. Good to see you again. Noah smiled. The owner turned toward Emma. You know, your husband helped save this place. Emma looked surprised. What? The owner laughed. He didn't tell you. Of course he didn't. Noah looked uncomfortable immediately. The owner continued. During the pandemic, business nearly collapsed. Emma listened carefully. We were struggling. The owner smiled. Noah organized support. What kind of support? Customers. The owner laughed. Lots of customers. Apparently Noah had encouraged neighbors and friends to support local businesses. The effort had helped several survive, including this restaurant. Emma stared at him. You never mentioned that. Noah shrugged. It wasn't a big deal. The owner laughed loudly. It was a very big deal. The conversation moved on. Yet Emma couldn't stop smiling. Every week she seemed to learn something new. Another act of kindness. Another sacrifice. Another example of character. And every discovery reinforced the same conclusion. She had married exactly the right person. Unfortunately, many others still disagreed. Many still focused on titles, appearances, assumptions. They remained blind to the truth standing directly in front of them. But that wouldn't last forever. Because Noah's past wasn't the only thing hidden beneath the surface. His present contained secrets too. Secrets involving investments, properties, financial decisions, years of careful planning, years of discipline, years of quiet success. Secrets that would soon become impossible to hide. And when those secrets finally emerged, the people who underestimated him would discover just how little they actually knew, including Emma herself. As Emma's first wedding anniversary approached, she found herself reflecting on everything that had happened during the previous year. The criticism, the judgment, the awkward conversations, the comparisons, all of it. And yet, despite every challenge, she had never been happier. Marriage with Noah wasn't just working. It was thriving. The more time they spent together, the stronger their relationship became. The more she learned about him, the more she respected him. And somehow, even after an entire year together, Noah still managed to surprise her. The first surprise arrived exactly 1 month before their anniversary. Emma returned home after work expecting an ordinary evening. Instead, she found Noah sitting at the dining table reviewing several documents. The moment he saw her, he closed the folder, too quickly. Emma noticed. Immediately. Was that dramatic on purpose? Noah smiled. No, it absolutely was. Nope. Emma laughed. then dropped her purse onto a nearby chair. What are you hiding? Nothing. You're a terrible liar. Good thing I'm not lying. Emma narrowed her eyes. The conversation continued for several minutes. Eventually, Noah changed the subject successfully, at least temporarily. Still, something felt different. Not suspicious, just secretive. And Noah wasn't normally secretive. The second surprise arrived a week later. Emma walked into the kitchen one morning and found Noah studying several property magazines. The moment he noticed her, he casually closed them. Again, too casually. She pointed. There. There what? That thing. What thing? The thing where you pretend you're not doing something. Noah laughed. I have no idea what you're talking about. Emma wasn't convinced. Not even slightly. Over the following weeks, the pattern continued. Phone calls, meetings, documents, conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Normally such behavior might have concerned her. But she knew Noah. Whatever he was planning wasn't harmful. It was probably thoughtful, or ridiculously generous, or both. The real question wasn't whether Noah was planning something. The real question was what. The answer arrived sooner than expected. 2 weeks before their anniversary, Noah handed her an envelope. No explanation, just an envelope. Emma examined it carefully. What is this? An invitation. To what? Noah smiled. Our anniversary? She blinked. Our anniversary. Yes. You invited me to my own anniversary. Noah nodded. Seemed polite. Emma laughed, then opened the envelope. Inside sat an elegant invitation card. Simple, beautiful, mysterious. The wording immediately caught her attention. Join us in celebrating 1 year of marriage. Location details to be provided on arrival. Formal attire requested. That's all? No address, no venue name, no clues. Emma looked up. What does this mean? You'll see? No? You'll see. She pointed at the card. Location details to be provided on arrival. Correct. That doesn't make any sense. It will? No. Emma shook her head. It really won't. Noah simply smiled. The smile told her everything. He was enjoying this. Far too much. News of the anniversary celebration spread quickly. Both families received invitations. Friends received invitations. Coworkers received invitations. Everyone received exactly the same mysterious instructions. And predictably, speculation exploded. The first reaction came from Victoria. She called Emma the following day. Do you know where the event is? No. You don't know? No. Victoria sounded genuinely confused. You're the wife. I know. How do you not know? Emma laughed. Ask Noah. I did. What did he say? He said I'd see. Emma smiled. Same answer I got. Victoria clearly wasn't amused. The second reaction came from Richard. He approached Noah during a family lunch. So where's this celebration happening? Noah smiled. It's a surprise. Richard frowned. A surprise. Wes. The answer revealed nothing, which seemed to be the point. Even Ethan became curious. A mutual acquaintance mentioned the anniversary event during a social gathering. Apparently, Ethan spent 20 minutes trying to determine the location. Nobody knew. That fact bothered him immensely. The mystery continued growing. Days passed. Questions multiplied. Answers remained non-existent. Meanwhile, Noah appeared unusually relaxed, almost excited. Emma noticed the change immediately. For months, she had watched him tolerate criticism, judgment, comparisons. Now, for the first time, he seemed quietly confident, as though he knew something everyone else didn't, which, technically, he did. One evening, they sat together on their apartment balcony watching the city lights. The anniversary was only days away. Emma finally tried again. Last chance. Noah smiled. For what? Tell me no. She sighed dramatically. I've been very patient. You've been very nosy. Emma laughed. Fair. The conversation paused. Then Emma studied him carefully. Can I ask something else? Of course. Why is this anniversary so important? The question seemed to catch him off guard. He looked out toward the city, thinking, then smiled softly. Because this year mattered. Emma listened. More than any other year. The sincerity in his voice immediately captured her attention. No continued. For most of my life, I spent time taking care of other people. She nodded. That was certainly true. Then I met you. Emma smiled. And for the first time, I found someone who took care of me too. The statement hit her harder than expected, because she understood exactly what he meant. Noah had spent years supporting others, protecting others, helping others. Very few people had done the same for him. Emma reached for his hand. Neither spoke for several moments. The city lights shimmered in the distance. The evening felt peaceful, perfect. Eventually Emma smiled. You're still not telling me where the party is, are you? No, P. She laughed. Thought so. The anniversary finally arrived on a warm Saturday evening. Guests received instructions directing them toward a meeting point near the outskirts of the city. Nothing more. By sunset, dozens of people had gathered. Family members, friends, coworkers, business associates. Everyone dressed formally. Everyone confused. Victoria looked around. I don't understand. Richard nodded. Neither do I. Sophia stood nearby, trying unsuccessfully to hide her excitement. Emma noticed immediately. You know something? Sophia smiled. No comment. You know, no comment. Emma pointed accusingly. You absolutely know. Sophia laughed, still refusing to answer. Interesting. Very interesting. More guests continued arriving. Luxury vehicles filled the area. Conversations erupted everywhere. Theories, guesses, speculation. Nobody seemed capable of agreeing on anything. Then Ethan arrived. He looked around with obvious confusion. This is the venue. Apparently not, because Noah soon appeared. Calm, confident, smiling. The crowd gradually quieted. Noah welcomed everyone, then made a simple announcement. Thank you all for coming. People listened. The venue is nearby. Several guests looked relieved. Finally, an answer. Then Noah continued. We'll head there together. Still no details. Several people exchanged frustrated looks. Emma tried not to laugh. Noah was clearly enjoying this. Moments later, a convoy of vehicles began moving through the city. The journey lasted nearly 20 minutes. Then 30. Eventually the scenery changed. The neighborhoods became more exclusive, more private, more expensive. Large estates appeared behind walls and gates. Victoria frowned. What are we doing here? Richard looked equally confused. Nobody answered. The convoy continued. Then finally it stopped. Guests exited their vehicles. Conversations immediately fell silent, because standing before them were enormous decorative gates, massive iron gates, beautifully designed, guarding something hidden beyond. Emma stared. Everyone stared. The property beyond remained mostly concealed by trees and distance. Only a glimpse of something larger appeared through the entrance. Noah stepped forward. A small smile appeared on his face. The same smile he had been hiding for weeks. For months. Perhaps longer. He turned toward the crowd. Toward family. Toward friends. Toward everyone who had spent years underestimating him. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a remote control. The gates began to open. Slowly. Dramatically. And as the opening widened, dozens of people found themselves staring at something they never expected to see. Something that would change everything. Something that would leave an entire crowd speechless. The truth about Noah Walker was finally waiting on the other side, and nobody was prepared for what came next. The gates opened slowly. Noah could have opened them instantly. The system allowed that. But somehow, watching the enormous iron gates swing apart one gradual inch at a time felt appropriate. Because for years, assumptions had surrounded him like walls. And now those walls were about to come down. Silence spread across the gathering. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sound came from the quiet hum of the gates. Then the view beyond became fully visible. And the entire crowd froze. A massive estate stretched across the property. Elegant, modern, Extraordinary. A long private driveway curved through beautifully landscaped grounds. Water features reflected golden evening light. Perfectly maintained gardens surrounded the property. Soft lighting illuminated stone pathways. And at the center stood a breathtaking mansion. For several seconds, nobody reacted. Their minds simply refused to process what they were seeing. Emma stared, then blinked, then stared again. Surely she was misunderstanding something. Perhaps this was a venue Noah had rented. Perhaps a company owned the property. Perhaps, no. Her voice barely emerged. He looked at her, smiling. The same calm smile he always wore, yet somehow tonight it carried a completely different meaning. What? Emma pointed toward the mansion. Words failed her. The crowd wasn't doing much better. Victoria looked stunned. Richard looked stunned. Even Sophia appeared emotional despite already knowing something. The only person who seemed comfortable was Noah. Finally someone spoke, a distant cousin. I don't understand. Several others nodded immediately. Neither did they. Noah gestured toward the driveway. Come on. Still no explanation. Still no answers. The mystery continued. Guests slowly followed, like people entering a dream. The driveway seemed endless. The closer they moved toward the mansion, the more impressive it became. Large windows reflected the sunset. Natural stone-covered portions of the exterior. Elegant architectural details appeared from every angle. The estate looked less like a house and more like something featured in luxury magazines. Emma walked beside Noah, still trying to understand. Who owns this? Noah glanced toward her. You'll see. She laughed. Not because she found it funny. Because her brain needed something to do. The answer made absolutely no sense. A few minutes later, everyone reached the front entrance. Massive wooden doors towered above them. The entryway alone was larger than many homes. People exchanged nervous glances, confused glances, curious glances. Then Noah opened the doors, and the second shock arrived. The interior looked even more impressive than the exterior. A grand staircase curved upward beneath a stunning chandelier. Polished floors reflected warm lighting. Elegant artwork decorated the walls. Large windows overlooked the surrounding property. Every detail felt carefully designed, sophisticated, luxurious, timeless. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, whispers, disbelief. People slowly entered, looking around in amazement. Nobody seemed capable of forming complete sentences. Victoria touched Richard's arm. Richard. He nodded. I know. No. She pointed toward the ceiling. Look at this place. Richard stared upward, still speechless. Meanwhile, Ethan stood near the entrance, completely frozen. The expression on his face alone was worth years of criticism. Emma almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she remained focused on Noah. Because none of this explained anything. Not yet. Guests wandered throughout the main floor, exploring, admiring, trying desperately to understand. Several minutes later, Noah gently tapped a glass. The room gradually became quiet. Everyone turned toward him. Finally, answers. Noah stood near the staircase, comfortable, relaxed, exactly as he always seemed. Even now, especially now. Thank you all for coming. The statement sounded almost absurd considering the circumstances. Several people laughed nervously. Noah smiled. I know everyone has questions. That might have been the understatement of the century. A wave of laughter moved through the room. The tension eased slightly. Then Noah continued. This anniversary is important to me. His gaze shifted toward Emma. For many reasons. Emma felt emotional immediately. The look in his eyes said everything. No matter what happened next, this wasn't about showing off. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anything. This was personal, meaningful, real. Noah looked back toward the crowd. For years, many people have known me as a sanitation worker. Several guests shifted uncomfortably because they knew exactly where this conversation was heading. And that's true. Noah smiled. I am a sanitation worker. The statement surprised people. Why say that now? Why emphasize it? Then Noah answered the unspoken question. I'm proud of that. The room became quiet again. No, wasn't ashamed. Never had been. Never would be. I believe every honest job has value. Several people nodded, especially those who had started rethinking their assumptions. Then Noah continued. But there are other parts of my life that I rarely discuss. There it was. The beginning. Emma's heart accelerated. Years of mystery. Years of unanswered questions. The hidden pieces were finally emerging. Noah gestured towards several framed displays positioned along one wall. Guests turned, only now noticing them. Large photographs, property images, documents, architectural renderings, maps. The displays looked almost like an exhibition, a visual timeline. Noah smiled. A long time ago, I bought a small property. Silence. I saved for years. Another pause. Then I bought another. Guests listened carefully. Then another. The room became impossibly quiet, because people were finally beginning to understand. Slowly, painfully, shockingly, Emma stared at the displays, at the addresses, at the dates, at the information, and suddenly countless small mysteries from the previous year made sense. The paperwork, the meetings, the phone calls, everything. Noah continued. Over time, I invested in real estate. Simple words. Massive impact. The crowd looked stunned, not because investing was unusual, because Noah had done it quietly, without bragging, without announcing it, without changing who he was. Richard stepped closer to one display, examining the information carefully. His eyes widened, then widened again. The realization clearly hit him. These weren't small investments. Not anymore. Years of disciplined decisions had transformed into something significant. Very significant. Victoria appeared equally stunned. So this? She looked around the mansion, then back toward Noah. Words failed her. Finally Noah nodded. Yes. A collective silence filled the room, because everyone understood what that answer meant. The mansion, the estate, the property, all of it, belonged to Noah. Emma felt her knees weaken slightly, not because of the money, not because of the house, because she realized how completely she had underestimated the scale of his success. Even she hadn't known. Not fully. Not even close. Sophia quietly wiped away tears. She remembered the beginning, the tiny apartment, the long hours, the sacrifices, the years of hard work. Seeing this moment felt overwhelming. Across the room, Ethan looked physically uncomfortable. The expression was impossible to miss, because every assumption he had ever made was collapsing, right in front of him, one piece at a time, and there was nothing he could do about it. Yet the most surprising thing wasn't the mansion. It wasn't the estate. It wasn't the wealth. It was Noah himself, standing in the center of all that success, completely unchanged, the same smile, the same humility, the same calm confidence, as though none of it defined him, because it didn't. And somehow, that made the revelation even more powerful. The evening was only beginning. The full truth had not yet been revealed. Not even close. Because the mansion was merely the first surprise. The real story. The complete story. The story of how a garbage truck driver built a fortune while everyone was busy judging him. That story was still waiting to be told. And before the night ended, several people would be forced to confront truths they had spent years avoiding, including themselves. For several minutes after Noah's announcement, nobody moved. The mansion felt strangely quiet, not because people had nothing to say, because they had too much. Questions, shock, disbelief, embarrassment, regret. Every emotion seemed to be competing for attention. Emma stood beside Noah, still trying to process everything. She had known he was intelligent. She had known he was disciplined. She had known he occasionally invested. But this was something entirely different. She looked around the grand foyer, then back at Noah, then at the displays lining the walls. Each display represented years of work, years of planning, years of decisions she had never known about. And somehow, through all of it, Nove had never mentioned any of it. Not once. Richard approached the displays first. His business instincts had already taken over. He examined documents carefully. Property acquisitions, renovation projects, purchase dates, financial summaries. The more he read, the quieter he became. Victoria noticed. "What is it?" Richard pointed toward one of the displays. Victoria stepped closer. Then her eyes widened. "Oh." That single word said everything. Emma joined them. One section outlined the timeline. The first property had been purchased nearly a decade earlier, a small duplex. Nothing glamorous. Nothing expensive. Just a modest investment. The second property followed 2 years later. Then another. Then another. Eventually entire residential buildings appeared. Commercial properties. Development partnerships. The progression looked almost unbelievable. Yet the documentation was right there. Carefully organized. Impossible to deny. Richard shook his head slowly. "This took years." Noah nodded. "Yes. How many properties do you own?" Several guests immediately leaned closer. The question everyone wanted answered. Noah smiled. "A few." The room laughed. For the first time all evening, genuine laughter filled the space. Even Emma laughed. "A few." Noah shrugged. "I lost count a while ago." That answer created an entirely new wave of shock. Across the room, Ethan looked as though someone had physically punched him. Emma almost felt sorry for him. Almost. A group of relatives moved toward another display. This one contained photographs, images showing various properties over the years. Many appeared run down in the beginning, neglected, damaged, unwanted. Then came photographs showing renovations, improvements, transformations. The final images revealed beautiful finished properties. One relative looked confused. "You renovated these?" Noah nodded. "Most of them." "Yourself?" "Whenever possible." The relative stared at him, apparently trying to reconcile two different images. The sanitation worker, the investor, the builder, the businessman. For years people had assumed those identities couldn't exist in the same person. Tonight they were discovering how wrong they had been. Meanwhile, Emma wandered through the displays on her own. The story unfolding before her felt incredible. Not because of the money, because of the discipline. Every step revealed patience, sacrifice, consistency. While many people spent money trying to look successful, Noah had quietly built actual success. And he had done it without changing who he was. That part impressed her most. Near the end of the display wall, she found something unexpected. An old photograph, a very old photograph. The image showed a young Noah standing beside a tiny apartment building. He looked exhausted. His clothes were simple. His smile was uncertain. The caption underneath caught Emma's attention. First investment property. Purchased with savings from 6 years of work. Emma stared at the photograph. 6 years. 6 years. Most people would have quit. Most people would have spent the money. Most people would have chosen easier paths. Noah hadn't. The realization brought tears to her eyes. A few minutes later, Noah joined her. He noticed the photograph immediately. "I hate that picture." Emma laughed. "Why?" "I looked terrified." "You were terrified." Fair point. They stood quietly together. Then Emma asked the question that had been building inside her all evening. "Why didn't you tell me?" Noah looked at the photograph, thinking carefully. Then he answered, "Because I wanted you to know me." The simplicity of the answer hit her hard. "You already knew me?" "Knew." He shook his head. "You knew Noah." Emma listened. "The guy who works sanitation." Another pause. "The guy who likes coffee." Another. "The guy who talks too much during movies." She smiled. That part was definitely true. Noah looked at her. "If I had told you all this immediately, then I never would have known." "Known what?" His answer came softly. "Whether people liked me or my success." Emma felt tears forming again, because she understood perfectly. For years Noah had been watching people reveal themselves. Some judged, some dismissed, some underestimated. Others didn't. And now he knew exactly who belonged in each category. Across the room, Victoria approached cautiously. For perhaps the first time in her life, she seemed uncertain. The feeling was unfamiliar and uncomfortable. She stopped in front of Noah. Neither spoke immediately. Then Victoria sighed. A long sigh. The kind people make when they realize they've been wrong. Very wrong. I owe you an apology. The room seemed to become quieter. Several nearby relatives turned toward them, listening. Victoria continued. I judged you. Noah smiled gently. A lot of people did. That's not an excuse. The honesty surprised everyone, including Emma. Victoria looked around the mansion, then back at Noah. I thought I understood you. Her voice softened. I didn't? Noah nodded. No. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Victoria did something unexpected. She hugged him. The gesture stunned half the room, especially Richard, especially Emma, especially Noah. Yet after a brief moment, Noah hugged her back. And just like that, years of tension began melting away. Not completely, but enough. Nearby, other relatives started having uncomfortable conversations of their own. Conversations they had avoided for a long time. One cousin admitted she had been unfair. Another apologized for assumptions. A family friend acknowledged past comments. The atmosphere slowly shifted. People weren't just shocked, they were reflecting. Looking backward, reevaluating their behavior. Unfortunately, not everyone handled the situation well. Ethan remained silent. Very silent. Which was unusual for Ethan. He normally loved attention. Tonight he seemed desperate to avoid it. Eventually Richard approached him. Not aggressively. Not angrily. Simply curiously. What do you think? Ethan forced a smile. It's impressive. Richard nodded. It is. The conversation ended there. Yet the message was clear. Very clear. For years Ethan had viewed Noah as inferior. Tonight reality had shattered that illusion. And there was nowhere to hide from it. As the evening continued, guests explored more of the estate. Private gardens, outdoor terraces, entertainment spaces, guest houses. The property seemed endless. Yet what impressed people most wasn't the luxury. It was the story. Because wealth alone rarely earns admiration. Stories do. And Noah's story was extraordinary. A man who worked before sunrise, collected garbage throughout the city, helped strangers, supported family, invested patiently, built quietly, succeeded without demanding recognition. That story resonated, far more than the mansion itself. Later that evening, guests gathered in the grand living room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the illuminated grounds. The atmosphere felt different now, lighter, warmer, more honest. For the first time in years, people were seeing Noah clearly. Not through assumptions, not through stereotypes, not through job titles. Clearly, and the more they learned, the more respect they felt. Yet one final revelation still remained. Because while everyone now understood that Noah was wealthy, they still didn't understand something even more important. Why he had never told anyone. Why he had endured years of criticism without correcting people. Why he had allowed them to underestimate him. The answer would arrive before the evening ended, and when it did, it would leave an even deeper impression than the mansion itself. Because Noah Walker had never been trying to hide wealth. He had been revealing character. Other people's character. And tonight, everyone was finally beginning to understand the difference. As the evening continued, the atmosphere inside the mansion changed completely. The shock remained. That wasn't going away anytime soon. But another feeling had begun replacing it. Respect. Real respect. Not the kind based on money. Not the kind based on titles. The kind that comes from understanding someone's journey. Guests gathered throughout the mansion discussing everything they had learned. Some explored the estate. Others examined the displays again. Many simply sat together processing the revelation. Everywhere Noah went, people wanted to speak with him, ask questions, hear stories, understand. The change was impossible to ignore. Emma noticed it immediately. For years she had watched people dismiss Noah after learning his profession. Tonight those same people couldn't wait to hear him speak. The contrast was almost painful, and Noah noticed it too. Yet his behavior never changed. He remained polite, friendly, patient, exactly as he had always been. That, more than anything else, impressed Emma, because many people would have enjoyed this moment. The vindication, the reversal, the chance to prove everyone wrong. Noah didn't seem interested in any of that. He simply answered questions, shared stories, and thanked people for coming. Eventually, a group gathered around him near the grand staircase. Richard stood nearby. Victoria stood beside him. Sophia sat quietly on a nearby chair. Emma joined them. Soon dozens of guests were listening. The gathering felt informal, natural. Yet everyone clearly wanted to hear more. One family friend asked the first question. When did you realize investing could become something bigger? Noah smiled. Probably after the second property. Laughter moved through the room. The answer sounded simple. Yet everyone knew the real story was more complicated. Noah continued. When I bought the first property, I wasn't thinking about becoming wealthy. People listened carefully. I just wanted something that belonged to me. The room became quiet, because many successful people understood that feeling, the desire to build something, create something, own something. Noah leaned against the staircase railing. The building wasn't impressive. More laughter. It was actually pretty terrible. That generated even more laughter, but it was mine. The statement carried obvious pride. Not arrogance. Pride, a healthy kind. The kind earned through hard work. Another guest raised a hand. How did you afford it? Noah smiled. Slowly. The answer sounded funny. Yet everyone knew he was serious. Years of saving. He shrugged. Years of saying no to things. Emma watched people carefully. Many looked uncomfortable, because discipline wasn't glamorous. People loved hearing success stories. They hated hearing sacrifice stories. Sacrifice required effort, responsibility, patience, things many people preferred avoiding. Noah continued. Most people think wealth appears suddenly. Several heads nodded. It usually doesn't. The room remained silent. Most of the time it's small decisions repeated for a very long time. Richard smiled. The businessman in him appreciated that answer, because it was true, extremely true. A young cousin spoke next. Were you ever afraid? The question surprised Noah. Then he laughed. Constantly. The honesty immediately relaxed the room. People expected confidence from successful individuals. They rarely expected vulnerability. Noah continued. When I bought the first property, I thought I might lose everything. Several people smiled. I had no idea what I was doing. Laughter followed. Then Noah shrugged. So I learned. Simple, direct, powerful. The discussion continued for nearly an hour. Questions flowed naturally. Stories followed. Guests learned about renovation projects, unexpected setbacks, financial challenges, long nights, hard lessons. None of it sounded easy, which made the outcome even more impressive. Eventually Richard stepped forward. His expression seemed thoughtful, almost emotional. For several moments he simply looked at Noah. Then he spoke. You know something? The room quieted. Richard rarely spoke without purpose. When Emma first introduced you to us, he paused. The memory, clearly uncomfortable. I thought I understood exactly who you were. No, listened quietly. So did I. Victoria's voice surprised everyone. She stepped beside her husband. I thought I had you figured out in 5 minutes. The room laughed softly, mostly because everyone knew she was telling the truth. Victoria sighed. I couldn't have been more wrong. The honesty felt refreshing. No excuses, no defensiveness, just truth. Richard nodded. We judged the cover. Another pause. We never read the book. The statement landed heavily, because it applied to far more than Noah. Many guests suddenly looked thoughtful, reflective, perhaps remembering their own assumptions, their own judgments. their own mistakes. Across the room, Ethan stood alone near one of the windows, watching, listening, remaining unusually quiet. Emma noticed. So did Noah. Eventually, Noah excused himself from the group and walked over. Ethan looked surprised, possibly nervous. "Hey." Noah smiled. "Hey." Several awkward seconds followed. Then Ethan cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology." Noah leaned against the window frame. "For what?" Ethan laughed once. A humorless laugh. "You know exactly what." The honesty surprised both of them. For years, Ethan had hidden behind sarcasm. Tonight, he didn't. "I judged you." The words sounded difficult. Very difficult. Noah nodded. "A lot of people did." Still, Ethan looked down briefly. "I was wrong." Silence followed. Then Noah smiled. "It's okay." The answer seemed to confuse Ethan. "What?" "It's okay." Noah shrugged. "People make mistakes." The simplicity stunned him. Perhaps he expected anger, resentment, revenge. Instead, he received grace, a much harder thing to respond to. Several minutes later, Ethan quietly left the conversation, looking thoughtful, possibly embarrassed, definitely changed. Meanwhile, Emma found herself standing alone on one of the mansion's balconies. The city lights stretched endlessly across the horizon. The view was incredible, yet her attention remained elsewhere, specifically on Noah. Inside the mansion, he laughed with guests, answered questions, shared stories, made people feel welcome, exactly as he always did. The mansion hadn't changed him. The money hadn't changed him. Success hadn't changed him. He was still Noah, the same man who chased documents through the rain, the same man who helped strangers, the same man who made her coffee every morning. The realization made her emotional. A few moments later, Noah joined her on the balcony. Neither spoke immediately. The evening breeze moved gently through the air. The city glowed below. Finally, Emma looked at him. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I would have married you anyway." Noah smiled. "I know." She laughed. "You sound very confident." "I am." "Why?" His answer came immediately. "Because you already did." Emma rolled her eyes, then laughed. Typical Noah. For a few moments they simply stood together, watching the city, enjoying the moment. Then Emma asked something she had been wondering all evening. "Are you happy?" Noah looked around the property, the guests, the lights, the celebration, then back at her. "Very." Another pause. Then Emma smiled. "You know everybody is going to talk about this forever." Noah laughed. "Probably. They'll tell this story for years. Maybe." Emma shook her head. "No, maybe." She pointed toward the mansion. "This is legendary." Noah laughed again, but then his expression became thoughtful, more serious. Because despite everything happening around them, one important conversation still remained. The most important conversation of the night. The reason he had never revealed the truth. The reason he had endured years of criticism. The reason he had allowed people to underestimate him. The mansion revealed what he had built, but not why he kept it hidden. That answer mattered more than any property, more than any investment, more than any amount of money. And before the celebration ended, everyone would finally hear it, including Emma, including the people who had spent years judging him. Because the real lesson of the evening wasn't about wealth. It never had been. And Noah was finally ready to explain why. The celebration continued late into the evening. Guests moved between rooms. Conversations flowed. Laughter echoed through the mansion. Yet beneath all the excitement, a feeling of anticipation remained. Everyone sensed there was still something left unsaid. The mansion explained the wealth. The property displays explained the investments. The photographs explained the journey. But one question remained unanswered. Why? Why keep it secret? Why allow years of misunderstanding? Why tolerate criticism that could have been silenced with a single sentence? The question lingered throughout the estate, and eventually Noah decided it was time to answer it. Near midnight, he gently tapped a glass again, The sound carried through the grand living room. Conversations gradually stopped. Guests turned toward him. Many found seats. Others remained standing. The atmosphere felt quieter now, more personal, more reflective. Noah stood beside the fireplace. Emma sat nearby. Victoria and Richard occupied a sofa. Sophia sat in the front row. Everyone waited. Noah smiled. "You've all asked a lot of questions tonight." Laughter spread through the room. That was certainly true. And most of those questions have been about the properties. He looked around. The investments. Another pause. The mansion. Several guests nodded. Noah folded his hands. Those things are part of the story. The room remained silent. But they're not the important part. That statement immediately captured everyone's attention. Because most people would consider the mansion the entire story. Noah clearly disagreed. He took a slow breath, then began. "When I was younger, we didn't have much." The room became still. Many guests had heard parts of this already, but not all of it. Not from Noah himself. "My mother worked incredibly hard." Sophia looked down briefly. Emotion appeared in her eyes. "She taught us something important." Noah smiled softly. "She taught us that a person's value isn't determined by what they own." The room listened carefully. "Or what they earn." Another pause. "Or what job title appears on a business card." Several people shifted uncomfortably, because they knew exactly where this was going. Noah continued. "She believed character mattered most." The words felt simple. Yet they carried enormous weight, especially in that room. Especially among people who had spent years focusing on appearances. When she got sick, things became difficult. Noah's voice remained steady. "We struggled." The understatement made Sophia smile sadly. Struggle didn't begin to describe those years. But even then, she taught us the same lesson. Noah looked around the room. Character first. Silence. Complete silence. Because nobody wanted to interrupt. Nobody wanted to miss a word. Years of assumptions were slowly being dismantled. One truth at a time. Noah continued. "After she passed away, I spent a long time trying to build a better life." His gaze drifted toward the property displays. The investments happened. A small smile. The properties happened. More smiles. The mansion happened. Laughter followed. Then Noah's expression became serious again. But something else happened too. The room quieted immediately. I started noticing how differently people treated me. Several guests lowered their eyes. Not because Noah sounded angry. Because he sounded honest. And honesty can be uncomfortable. When people thought I was just a sanitation worker. He paused. They made assumptions. Noah wasn't accusing anyone. That somehow made the words hit harder. They assumed I wasn't ambitious. Another pause. They assumed I wasn't successful. Another. They assumed I wasn't intelligent. The room remained silent, because many people had done exactly that. Victoria closed her eyes briefly. Richard stared at the floor. Neither could deny it. Noah continued. And the interesting thing is, he smiled softly. Most of them never asked. That statement landed like a stone, because it was true. People had decided who Noah was without ever truly learning about him. The realization spread throughout the room. One uncomfortable face at a time. Noah looked toward Emma, then back at the guests. So eventually I stopped correcting people. The statement surprised several attendees. A cousin raised an eyebrow. Why? Noah smiled. The answer came immediately. Because I learned something valuable. Everyone waited. When people don't know your bank account. Silence. They show you who they really are. The room froze. The statement carried more power than anything else he had said all evening. Because everyone understood it. Every single person. Noah continued quietly. Some people treated me with kindness. He smiled toward several guests. Others didn't. No names. No accusations. No embarrassment. Just truth. And I learned a lot. The room remained silent. Not because they disagreed. Because they couldn't. The evidence sat all around them. Years of judgments. Years of assumptions. Years of mistakes. Noah glanced around the mansion. The funny thing is, a small smile appeared. Nothing changed. Several people looked confused. He gestured toward himself. I'm still the same person. That statement struck Emma particularly hard. Because it was true. Absolutely true. The mansion hadn't changed Noah. The money hadn't changed Noah. Success hadn't changed Noah. Only other people's perceptions had changed. Nothing else. The realization felt profound. Victoria suddenly stood. The movement surprised everyone. She walked slowly toward Noah. The room watched. Curious, interested, emotional. Victoria stopped directly in front of him. Then she spoke. When Emma first told us about you. Her voice trembled slightly. I worried. Noah nodded. I know. Victoria smiled sadly. No. She shook her head. You don't. The room listened carefully. I wasn't worried because of money. Another pause. I was worried because I thought I understood success. Tears appeared in her eyes. And I was wrong. The honesty stunned everyone, especially Emma. Victoria looked around the room, then back toward Noah. I spent years teaching my daughter to recognize successful people. Her voice softened. It turns out she was better at it than I was. Several people laughed quietly. Even Noah. Victoria hugged him again. This time the room applauded, not because the gesture was dramatic, because it felt genuine, real, earned. When she returned to her seat, Richard stood next. His personality was different, less emotional, more reserved. Yet his expression revealed plenty. He looked directly at Noah, then spoke. For most of my career, I believed I could judge people accurately. A pause. That confidence cost me. The room became quiet. Because Richard Carter rarely admitted mistakes. Very rarely. I saw your job. He nodded. And missed the man. Noah smiled. Richard extended his hand. A simple gesture. Yet it meant everything. Noah shook it. The room applauded again. Across the living room, other guests looked thoughtful, reflective. Many seemed lost in their own memories. Remembering comments, assumptions, moments they wished they could take back. Not because Noah was wealthy, because they had treated another human being unfairly. That was the real issue. Not money. Never money. Character. Respect, dignity. The lessons people often claim to value, until they're tested. Hours later, as the celebration slowly began winding down, Emma and Noah stepped onto the terrace overlooking the estate. The night air felt cool, comfortable, peaceful. The property lights glowed softly below. For a while neither spoke. Then Emma smiled. Well, Noah laughed. Well, she shook her head. You completely changed my family's worldview. I wouldn't go that far. Emma pointed toward the mansion. My mother hugged you twice. Noah laughed harder. Fair point. The silence returned. Comfortable silence. The kind shared between people who know each other completely. Then Emma looked at him. You know what tonight really proved? What? Her smile widened. You were right. Noah raised an eyebrow. About what? Everything. He groaned dramatically. Emma laughed. But deep down, she knew it was true. Noah had understood something years before everyone else. Something most people spend their entire lives learning. Character reveals itself when status disappears. And tonight, dozens of people had finally learned that lesson. Some more painfully than others. Yet the story wasn't quite over. Because tomorrow morning, when the celebration ended and people returned to their normal lives, they would carry something with them. Not just memories of a mansion. Not just memories of wealth. A lesson. One they would never forget. And neither would Emma. The morning after the anniversary celebration felt strangely quiet. For the first time in months, there were no secrets left to reveal. No mysterious invitations. No hidden properties. No unanswered questions. The truth was finally out, and the impact became obvious almost immediately. Emma noticed the change before breakfast. Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages. Calls. emails, social media notifications. Everyone wanted to talk about the mansion. Everyone wanted to talk about Noah. Everyone suddenly seemed fascinated by the same man they had ignored for years. Emma sat at the kitchen table scrolling through messages. The irony wasn't lost on her. Not even slightly. One message came from a distant cousin. Another from an old college friend. Several arrived from people she barely knew. Most shared the same theme. Congratulations. Admiration. Excitement. Curiosity. Emma set her phone down, then looked across the table at Noah. He appeared completely unaffected. As usual, he calmly drank coffee while reading the morning news. You're not curious. He looked up. About what? The 57 messages I received before breakfast. Noah smiled. I'm guessing they aren't asking about the weather. Emma laughed. Not exactly. Then I'm probably not interested. The answer perfectly captured Noah's personality. The attention meant nothing to him. Absolutely nothing. Unfortunately, it meant a lot to other people. The first major example arrived later that afternoon. Victoria invited Emma and Noah to lunch. Normally, such invitations involved family discussions. Today felt different. When they arrived, several additional guests were already there. Family friends, relatives, people who just happened to be visiting. An interesting coincidence. Or not. Emma suspected the latter. The atmosphere immediately felt different. Warmer. Friendlier. More enthusiastic. One family friend approached Noah almost instantly. I've been hoping to speak with you. Emma nearly laughed. 3 months ago, that same woman could barely hide her disinterest. Now she seemed fascinated. Noah smiled politely. Good to see you. The woman launched into questions. Real estate, investments, market trends, property management, topics she had never discussed with him before. Not once. Noah answered kindly, patiently, respectfully, exactly as he always did. Across the room, Emma watched the interaction. Then another. Another. The pattern became impossible to ignore. People who previously overlooked Noah now sought his attention. People who once dismissed him now admired him. People who barely acknowledged him now wanted his advice. The transformation felt remarkable and slightly depressing. Eventually, Emma joined Sophia near one of the windows. Sophia was watching the same thing. You see it too? Emma nodded. Oh yeah. Sophia laughed. It's ridiculous. Very. Together they watched another relative approach Noah. Another conversation began. Another enthusiastic interaction. Emma shook her head. Nothing about him changed. Sophia smiled. I know. Literally nothing. Still the same Noah. Emma crossed her arms. The only thing that changed was what people learned. Sophia nodded. And that says more about them than him. Exactly. That was the problem. And the lesson. Several days later, another example appeared. This time involving Ethan Bennett. Emma encountered him at a charity fundraiser. The venue buzzed with conversation. Guests moved between tables. Music played softly. Everything felt normal. Until Ethan approached. His demeanor had changed noticeably. Gone was the subtle arrogance. Gone were the dismissive comments. Gone was the confidence built on assumptions. Instead, he seemed thoughtful, almost humble. Emma, Ethan. You for a moment neither spoke. Then Ethan smiled awkwardly. How's Noah? The question surprised her. Mostly because it sounded genuine. He's good. I'm glad. Another pause followed. Then Ethan sighed. I owe both of you an apology. Emma studied him carefully. The sincerity appeared real, unexpectedly real. I wasn't fair. No, I wasn't. Ethan shook his head. I thought I understood people. The statement sounded familiar. Many people had been saying similar things lately. Then Ethan surprised her again. The embarrassing part is that I wasn't judging Noah. Emma raised an eyebrow. What were you judging? My own assumptions. That answer earned her attention. For perhaps the first time since she'd known him, Ethan sounded honest. Truly honest. I saw a job title. He laughed once. And invented an entire person. Emma nodded slowly, because that's exactly what had happened. Not just with Ethan. With many people. Most people. The conversation lasted only a few minutes. Yet when it ended, Emma felt strangely hopeful. Perhaps people really could change. Perhaps lessons could be learned. Perhaps growth was possible. Meanwhile, Noah remained completely unaware of most of these discussions. Or perhaps he simply didn't care. Emma wasn't entirely sure. One evening, she finally asked him. They sat together on the mansion's rear terrace watching the sunset. The property stretched beautifully around them. Yet Noah appeared just as comfortable here as he had in their apartment. The setting changed. The man didn't. Can I ask you something? Always. Emma looked toward the gardens. Do you notice how differently people treat you now? Noah smiled. A little. Little. He laughed. Okay. A lot. Emma nodded. Does it bother you? The question lingered between them. Noah considered it carefully. Longer than usual. Finally he answered. Sometimes. The honesty surprised her. Really? Sure. He looked toward the horizon. It's disappointing. Emma listened. When people treat you better because they think you have money. Another pause. That's disappointing. She nodded, because she understood. Completely. Then Noah smiled. But it also teaches you something. What? His answer arrived immediately. Who people want to be. Emma looked confused. Noah continued. Most people aren't bad. He gestured toward the estate. They're just distracted. The answer sounded exactly like Noah. Compassionate. Understanding. Perhaps more generous than necessary. Yet Emma admired that about him. He always searched for the best in people. Even when they didn't deserve it. Especially when they didn't deserve it. The following weekend, Richard invited Noah to accompany him to a business conference. The invitation shocked everyone, especially Richard. For years he had assumed Noah wouldn't belong in those environments. Now he actively wanted Noah there. The change was dramatic and obvious. During the conference, Richard introduced Noah to numerous colleagues. Investors, developers, business owners, industry leaders. Many recognized Noah's name immediately. News of the anniversary celebration had spread widely. What surprised Richard most wasn't their recognition. It was their respect. Genuine respect. Several people already knew about Noah's investment history. Others knew about his property developments. Many had heard stories about his character. By the end of the day, Richard felt oddly emotional. Because he finally understood something. Success had always existed in Noah's life. Richard simply hadn't been looking in the right place. That realization stayed with him. Days later, he shared it with Victoria. And she admitted feeling exactly the same. The months continued passing. Gradually, the excitement surrounding the revelation began fading. People returned to their normal lives. Conversations moved on. The mansion became old news. The surprise became history. Yet one thing remained. Perspective. People viewed Noah differently now, not because they discovered wealth, because they discovered depth. A story. A journey. A person. And for many, that discovery changed something permanent. One evening, nearly 6 months after the anniversary celebration, Emma hosted a dinner at the mansion. Friends, family, coworkers, a small gathering, nothing extravagant. As guests laughed and shared stories around the dining table, Emma looked around the room. The atmosphere felt different than it had years earlier. Lighter, kinder, more genuine. No one discussed Noah's profession. No one questioned his worth. No one compared him to anyone else. The judgments were gone. Finally, and as Emma watched Noah laughing with guests, helping serve food, and making everyone feel welcome, she realized something. The mansion hadn't earned him respect. The mansion had simply forced people to pay attention. Once they paid attention, they discovered the man who had been standing there all along. The man she had fallen in love with. The man everyone else had overlooked. And in the end, that turned out to be the greatest surprise of all. Nearly a year had passed since the anniversary celebration. The mansion no longer felt shocking. The story no longer dominated conversations. Life had settled into a new normal. And yet, every so often, Emma found herself thinking about everything that had happened, not the revelation itself, the years before it, the comments, the assumptions, the quiet disrespect, the way people had treated Noah when they believed he was just a sanitation worker. The memory still bothered her, because now she knew something many others had finally learned. The mansion was never the point. The real issue had been how quickly people judged someone they didn't understand. One autumn afternoon, Emma hosted a family lunch at the estate. Nothing formal, just family. Victoria arrived first, then Richard. Soon after came Sophia. Several cousins followed. The atmosphere felt warm and relaxed. As lunch continued, stories naturally drifted toward the past. Family memories, funny moments, old misunderstandings. Eventually someone mentioned the anniversary celebration. The room laughed. Even now, people still talked about it. One cousin shook her head. "I still can't believe that night." Another nodded. "I thought Noah had rented the place." Laughter followed. Then another relative added something that made the room quieter. "I feel embarrassed when I think about it." Several people nodded, including Victoria. Emma listened carefully. The cousin continued. "I judged him immediately." The honesty surprised everyone. "I didn't even know him." Another relative sighed. "Neither did I." The admissions kept coming, one after another. Small confessions, small truths, years late, but still meaningful. Victoria looked toward Emma, then toward Noah. "I think the hardest part was realizing how confident I was." The room became quiet. She continued. "I wasn't uncertain." A pause. "I was convinced." Emma understood exactly what she meant. Being wrong wasn't the painful part. Being certain while wrong was. Victoria shook her head. "I looked at a profession and decided I knew everything." The statement lingered, because many people in the room had done the same thing. Not just with Noah, with others too. Richard nodded slowly. "We all do it." Nobody argued, because it was true. Human beings love shortcuts, labels, categories, assumptions. Understanding someone properly required effort. Judging them required almost none. Noah remained quiet through most of the conversation. As usual, he never seemed interested in reliving old mistakes, especially other people's mistakes. Eventually Emma looked toward him. "You're being suspiciously silent." Noah laughed. "I've already had my turn." "New." Emma smiled. "I think you should say something." Several family members agreed. The room turned toward him. Waiting. Noah sighed dramatically. The reaction earned laughter. Then he looked around the table. At family, friends, people who had once doubted him, people who now respected him. Finally he spoke. "I honestly don't think about it very much." The answer surprised everyone, including Emma. "You don't?" "No." He shrugged. "What's the point?" Several people exchanged glances. Noah continued. "I spent too many years worrying about important things." The room listened carefully. Keeping food on the table. A pause. Paying bills. Another. Taking care of family. He smiled softly. Compared to those problems, opinions feel pretty small. Silence followed. Not awkward silence. Thoughtful silence. Because nobody could argue with that perspective. A cousin leaned forward. "Weren't you angry?" Noah considered the question, then nodded. "Sometimes." The honesty caught everyone off guard, but not for the reasons people think. The room waited. "I wasn't angry because people underestimated me." Another pause. "I was angry because they underestimated others too." That answer changed everything. The room became completely still. Noah looked around. There are millions of people doing important work every day. His voice remained calm, steady. Teachers. Another pause. Drivers. Another. Cleaners. Another. Construction workers. He smiled. People who keep the world running. Nobody interrupted. Nobody moved. The truth carried too much weight. They deserve respect too. The statement hit harder than anything else he had said, because suddenly the conversation became larger than Noah. Much larger. It became about dignity, respect, human value, the things people claimed to believe, yet often forgot. Emma felt proud, not because of the mansion, not because of the investments, because of moments like this. Moments when Noah reminded people what actually mattered. Later that evening, after most guests left, Emma found herself sitting with Victoria on the terrace. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. The gardens glowed beneath the fading light. For a while neither spoke. Then Victoria sighed. "I owe you an apology too." Emma looked surprised. "For what?" Victoria smiled sadly. "A lot of things." The answer felt honest. "Very honest. I made your life harder." Emma didn't immediately respond, because denying it would be dishonest. Victoria had made things harder, not intentionally, but she had. Eventually Emma nodded. "A little." Victoria laughed. "A little? Okay." Emma smiled. "A lot." Both women laughed. The tension of previous years felt distant now. Not forgotten. Just healed. Victoria looked toward the estate. "You know what bothers me most?" "What?" "The fact that I would have approved sooner if I'd known." Emma understood immediately. That realization had haunted many people. Victoria shook her head. "I wish I had seen him the same way from the beginning." The regret sounded genuine. And perhaps that was enough. Nobody could change the past. They could only learn from it. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Richard and Noah sat in the library discussing business. Something that would have seemed impossible 2 years earlier. Richard smiled. "You know, I used to think success looked a certain way." Noah laughed. "So I've heard." Richard laughed too. "Fair." Then he became serious. "The older I get, the more I realize success is simpler than people think." Noah listened. Richard looked toward family photographs displayed on a nearby shelf. "You're happy." Another pause. "Emma's happy." Another. "Your family is happy." He smiled. "That's success." No nodded. The answer felt right, because, despite everything he had built, those things mattered most. Not the properties, not the investments, not the estate, the people. Always the people. Several weeks later, Emma would receive an unexpected opportunity. A chance to speak publicly at a major leadership conference. Thousands of attendees. Business leaders from across the country. The organizers wanted her to discuss success, achievement, personal growth, the usual topics. Emma accepted. But after everything she had learned, she already knew what she wanted to talk about. Not strategy, not wealth, not business. Something far more important. A lesson taught by a sanitation worker who quietly built a fortune while teaching everyone around him what real success actually looked like. And that lesson was about to reach a much larger audience. One that desperately needed to hear it. 6 weeks later, Emma stood backstage at one of the largest leadership conferences in the country. Thousands of people filled the auditorium. Executives, entrepreneurs, investors, consultants, professionals from nearly every industry imaginable. The event organizers had invited her to speak about success. On paper, she was the perfect choice. She had built a respected career, advised major companies, earned recognition throughout her industry. The audience expected a presentation about business strategy, growth, performance, achievement. Instead, Emma planned to tell a very different story. A staff member approached. "They're ready for you." Emma nodded, then glanced toward the front row. Noah sat beside Victoria, Richard, and Sophia. All four smiled encouragingly. The sight immediately calmed her nerves. A moment later, the announcer introduced her. Applause filled the auditorium. Emma walked onto the stage. Bright lights illuminated the room. Thousands of faces looked back at her. She reached the podium, smiled, and began. "Good afternoon." The audience responded warmly. Emma looked around the room, then asked a simple question. How many of you believe you're good at judging people? Several attendees laughed. A few hands even went up. Emma smiled. That's what I thought. The audience settled in. Curious. Interested. Then Emma continued. A few years ago, I believed the same thing. The room grew quieter. I thought I could understand someone quickly. Another pause. I thought I could recognize character. Another. I thought I was observant. The audience listened carefully. Then Emma smiled. It turns out I wasn't nearly as good at it as I believed. The story began. She spoke about meeting Noah. The rainy morning. The scattered documents. The kindness of a stranger. She described the early days of their relationship. The conversations. The friendship. The growing connection. Then she discussed something more important. The reactions. The judgments. The assumptions. Without naming specific individuals, she described what happened when people learned Noah worked in sanitation. The audience immediately understood. Some looked uncomfortable because they recognized themselves in the story. Emma continued. People made assumptions. The room remained silent. They assumed they understood him. Another pause. They assumed they knew his potential. Another. They assumed they knew his value. The words carried weight. Real weight. Because everyone had done something similar at some point. Emma knew that. So did the audience. Then she shared the anniversary story. The mysterious invitation. The gates. The mansion. The revelation. Laughter appeared throughout the room. Shock appeared too. The story sounded almost unbelievable. Yet the audience remained completely engaged. For nearly an hour, nobody looked at their phones. Nobody whispered. Nobody seemed distracted. The story had captured them. But Emma wasn't interested in impressing them. She wanted them to learn something, the same thing she had learned. Eventually, she reached the most important part. The mansion wasn't the lesson. The room became completely silent. It never was. Emma looked around carefully. The lesson was how differently people behaved before they knew about it. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The auditorium felt frozen. Because everyone understood. The problem wasn't ignorance. The problem was judgment. Emma continued. Success didn't change him. Another pause. Our knowledge changed. Another. That's very different. Several people nodded. The truth felt impossible to ignore. Then Emma smiled. My husband taught me something. She looked toward the front row. Toward Noah. The audience followed her gaze. He taught me that character is often invisible. The room listened carefully. You have to look for it. Another pause. You have to pay attention. Another, and most importantly, she smiled. You have to stop assuming. The audience erupted into applause. Not polite applause. Real applause. The kind that happens when people recognize truth. When the applause finally settled, Emma finished her presentation. The response exceeded every expectation. People stood. Thousands of them. A standing ovation. Emma felt emotional immediately. Not because of the applause. Because the message mattered. The audience wasn't celebrating a mansion. They were celebrating a lesson. A human lesson. A universal lesson. One everyone needed. After the presentation ended, attendees gathered throughout the conference center discussing the story. Many shared personal experiences. Times they had judged incorrectly. Times they had been judged unfairly. The conversations continued for hours. And everywhere Emma went, people thanked her. Not for the business advice she didn't give. For the perspective she shared. Later that evening, she finally reunited with Noah. The conference had ended. The crowds were gone. The building had grown quiet. Emma found him standing near a large window overlooking the city. What are you doing? Noah smiled. Thinking. Dangerous. He laughed. Probably. Emma stood beside him. For several moments neither spoke. Then Noah looked at her. You did good. The simple compliment meant more than all the applause. Because it came from him. Thanks. Another pause. Then Noah smiled. I think you accidentally became inspirational. Emma laughed. I blame you. Fair. They stood together watching the city lights. Comfortable, peaceful, happy. Eventually Noah spoke again. You know what the funny part is? What? He gestured toward the skyline. The story was never about me. Emma smiled. Of course it was. No. He shook his head. It was about choices. The answer immediately captured her attention. No, continued. People choose how they treat others. Another pause. They choose what matters. Another. They choose what they value. Emma nodded slowly. Because he was right. Again, the story had never been about wealth. The wealth simply exposed choices people had already made. That was the real lesson. Several months later, clips from Emma's speech continued circulating online. Millions of people watched, commented, shared, discussed. The message reached audiences far beyond the conference. Teachers shared it with students. Managers shared it with employees. Parents shared it with children. The lesson spread. And every time someone asked Emma what inspired the speech, she always gave the same answer. A sanitation worker. That answer usually surprised people. Then she smiled, because surprises were often where the best lessons lived. As the years passed, the story gradually became part of family history. A favorite memory. A lesson people referenced often. Especially during gatherings. Especially when someone seemed too quick to judge. And every time the story was told, the focus shifted further away from the mansion. Closer to what actually mattered. Closer to the person. Closer to the lesson. Closer to the truth, which was exactly where it belonged. And though the story was nearly over, one final chapter remained. One final moment. A simple moment that would reveal, better than anything else, what this entire journey had really been about. 10 years later, the mansion still stood proudly on the hillside overlooking the city. The gardens were larger now, the trees taller, the property more beautiful than ever. Yet anyone visiting for the first time would probably be surprised by something. The house looked extraordinary. The people inside it felt ordinary. In the best possible way. Success had changed many things in Noah and Emma's lives, but it had never changed who they were. That was the part both of them valued most. On a warm spring afternoon, the estate buzzed with activity. Tables filled the lawn. Families gathered beneath shaded canopies. Children ran through the gardens laughing. Friends talked near the terrace. The atmosphere felt joyful, relaxed, comfortable. The occasion wasn't a business celebration. It wasn't an investment event. It wasn't an anniversary reveal. It was simply a family gathering. The kind of gathering Noah loved most. Emma stood on the terrace watching guests arrive. A familiar feeling washed over her. Gratitude. Not for the mansion, not for the wealth, for the people. Always the people. Sophia approached carrying a tray of drinks. Need help? Emma laughed. You've been helping all day. Sophia smiled. Occupational habit. Emma looked across the lawn. Children chased each other between flower beds. Several relatives laughed around a picnic table. Richard argued playfully with a cousin about sports. Victoria organized desserts despite nobody asking her to. Some things never changed. Mom still thinks she's in charge. Sophia laughed. She absolutely is. Both women smiled. Because it was true. A few moments later, Noah appeared carrying a stack of folding chairs. Emma immediately shook her head. Seriously? What? We have staff. Noah looked confused. I know. Then why are you carrying chairs? He smiled. Because chairs don't move themselves. Emma laughed. After all these years, he remained exactly the same. The mansion, the investments, the success. None of it had changed him. And somehow that remained one of the most impressive things about him. Later that afternoon, guests gathered for lunch. Conversations flowed naturally. Stories filled the air. Laughter echoed across the estate. At one point, a younger family member approached Noah, a teenager preparing to graduate, ambitious, curious, trying to figure out life. Can I ask you something? Sure. The teenager hesitated, then spoke. What's the secret? Several nearby relatives immediately laughed, because they had heard variations of this question for years. The teenager continued. The success. Another pause. The properties. Another. The life. Noah smiled, then looked around the gathering, at family, at friends, at Emma. Finally he answered, there isn't a secret. The teenager looked disappointed. There has to be. Noah laughed. There really doesn't. Then he pointed around the property. People always look at the ending. The teenager listened carefully. They rarely look at the years before it. The conversation immediately captured everyone's attention. Several nearby guests turned toward Noah, listening. Just as they had years earlier. Noah continued. Most success stories sound fast when you summarize them. A pause. But they feel very slow while you're living them. Several adults nodded. They understood exactly what he meant. The teenager considered that. Then asked another question. Were you always confident? The entire family laughed, including Noah. No. More laughter followed. Not even close. The teenager smiled. Then how did you keep going? Noah thought for a moment, then gave the answer Emma expected. The answer that perfectly captured who he was. I focused on the next step. The teenager looked confused. The next step. Noah nodded. Not the whole journey. Another pause. Just the next step. The answer seemed almost too simple, yet everyone knew it was true. That philosophy explained everything. The properties, the investments, the success, the life he built. One step at a time, one decision at a time, one day at a time. Wonder that evening, as the gathering began winding down, Emma and Noah walked through the gardens together. The same gardens that had once amazed an entire crowd. Now they simply felt like home. The sunset painted the sky with shades of gold and orange. Flowers swayed gently in the evening breeze. The atmosphere felt peaceful. Perfect. For a while neither spoke. Then Emma smiled. You know something? What? I still think the best part of this story is funny. Noah laughed. Which part? The fact that everyone thought the mansion was the surprise. He smiled. It was a pretty good surprise. True. Emma nodded. But it wasn't the real one. Noah already knew what she meant. The real surprise was you. He rolled his eyes. Emma laughed. I'm serious. She stopped walking, then turned toward him. The mansion impressed people. A pause. You changed them. The statement lingered between them. Because it was true. Over the years, countless people had learned something from Noah. Friends, family, coworkers, strangers, not because he preached, not because he lectured, because he lived his values consistently. Every single day, Emma took his hand. When people tell this story now, they barely talk about the house. Ooh, Noah smiled. Good. That answer didn't surprise her at all. What they remember is the lesson. Another pause. They remember how wrong everyone was. Noah nodded, and hopefully they remember not to repeat it. The evening light softened around them. The gardens glowed beneath the setting sun. The mansion stood quietly in the distance. Beautiful. Impressive. Yet somehow less important than ever. Because the house had never been the point. Not really. The point was dignity. The point was character. The point was treating people with respect before they earned it in ways society happened to admire. Years ago, people looked at Noah Walker and saw a sanitation worker. Then they discovered he was wealthy. Eventually they learned something even more important. Neither fact defined him. His character did. And in the end, that became the lesson everyone carried forward. Not the mansion. Not the money. Not the investments. The lesson. Never judge a person's worth by their job title, because the most valuable things about a person are often the things you cannot see. Emma looked at Noah one final time as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon. The same man. The same smile. The same heart. The same person she had met on a rainy morning so many years ago. and she felt grateful. Not because everyone eventually recognized his value, because she recognized it before they did.